Comic Geek Speak presents The Crisis Tapes, Episode 20, Crisis on Infinite Earths, Issue 5, Part 2. I'm Adam Murdo.
I'm Peter Rios.
Welcome to the show. Joining you again after spending 3 hours with you talking about nothing but the cover to the 5th issue of Crisis, Part 1 of Act 2 of this epic and epochal 12-issue maxi series that changed the DC universe as we all know and love it. And so now we're going to actually maybe put in some time talking about the inside of the issue. How about that, Peter?
How about that? Go right to the content, right? That's great. That'll be fun. This should be actually part 1. We should have just called that one the cover, Let them know going in what they're going to get.
Oh, they knew.
Yeah.
They knew. Thanks to that cover image you put together.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, sure.
That was a great idea for a few reasons.
Cool. You have an addendum to that episode. We should pull back the curtain a little bit that we are recording this episode before we even released the cover episode. So if there's any feedback on that, we don't know.
Right. It's in the future.
Yeah.
And while all time may be one for the DC multiverse in this issue, it is not so for us here on Earth Prime. So, some of you have probably already pounced on us for this, or me specifically, because I realized as we were going through all those 90-plus headshots on the cover of issue number 5, I missed one. It was on the Earth 2 side. If you look down between the two bottommost rows, in between Earth 2 Robin and Power Girl above and Jade and Our Man below, there's a gentleman with kind of a chevron-shaped stripe on his cowl. Looks kind of metallic and reflective. That is the original Golden... I can't really call him Golden Age because he's a 1970s introduction character, but a World War II era retcon-introduced character called Steel the Indestructible Man, later renamed Commander Steel by Roy Thomas. His real name was Henry Hank Haywood, and he was created by Jerry Conway and Don Heck, I believe it was, on the art, in his own solo series. I guess Jerry Conway just jonesed for a Captain America-style figure in the DC universe, whose adventures were set during World War II, because that was kind of an in thing in the late 70s. Wonder Woman's title, thanks to her TV adventures, switched over to a World War II setting for a little bit. So in March of 1978, Conway and Heck introduced Steel the Indestructible Man. He was DC's own super soldier. He didn't rely on a serum, though. Instead, he had a mechanical endoskeleton given to him by scientist Professor Gilbert S. Giles, and his daughter Gloria Giles was kind of the love interest. And so for 5 issues, this 1970 this Bronze Age, Golden Age hero had a few adventures. He wasn't really specifically cited on Earth 2. In fact, later on, when Conway also brought us the Detroit bunker-era Justice League and introduced the original Steel's grandson, Hank III, the second Steel, that was clearly placed on Earth 1, and his grandfather, the 1940s Steel, must have been a resident of Earth 1 too. However, Roy Thomas, was sort of the dean of DC's Golden Age continuity, had a couple things to say about that. He decided, to him, no costumed heroes on Earth 1 during World War II was kind of a hard and fast rule, and anybody who was operative in comics in the 40s, in the DC universe, probably got his or her start, with the exception granted to the Fawcett characters. But even the quality comics characters DC ultimately acquired, Roy Thomas decided they all originated on Earth 2 and later migrated to Earth X. And that was kind of the case with Steel, too. Roy Thomas established right from the get-go, at the very beginning of his All-Star Squadron series, that Hank Haywood the First, Steel, was a denizen of Earth 2. He immediately promoted him to Commander Steel in All-Star Squadron, like the first couple of stories, to avoid confusion with his grandson, who was already, I think, I guess not. I guess he
just went by Steel.
Oh, yeah, but I'm just trying to think if he had already been introduced by the first issue of All-Star Squadron, which was 1981.
No.
All right, then I'm not sure why Roy Thomas went ahead and promoted Steel to Commander Steel right away. But he did, and which was handy because it made it a little easier to distinguish 1940s Commander Steel from 1980s Justice League member Steel. Yeah, and so Conway, when he came along and introduced Steel II and his grandfather, both on Earth 1 in Detroit, because he was like the financier, the older Haywood was the financier of the Detroit Justice League. And so he's the one who donated the bunker in the first place.
Right.
So he was obviously on Earth 1 at that point, whereas Roy Thomas had already said, hey, guess what? We're retroactively establishing that this 1970s character was having adventures in 1940s Earth 2.
And since the JLA Detroit was 1984, I want to say, do you think they might have just had rumblings of Crisis? So they said, you know what, let's just keep it. If I'm going to use this character, because Jerry Conway is using one of his characters, right, a legacy built on his own characters, maybe they just said, let's avoid everything because, you know what, in 20 minutes, we're not even going to have an Earth 2. I wonder if maybe that was the speculation.
Could have been. And 1984 was certainly far enough forward in time that rumblings, as you say, could have been heard throughout the DC offices. But it didn't stop, even though they had a sense that all of this might be moot, it didn't stop Roy Thomas from coming up with an explanation eventually in All-Star Squadron number 50, which was kind of his 11th hour, let's explain all of this crap really quick before it's irrelevant issue. Really big crisis-dense crossover that we'll be talking about eventually at some length, I'm sure. But it was in that issue that I guess he finally explained, how all the Quality Comics characters got to Earth X from Earth 2, and among several other things, how Steel traveled from Earth 2 at some point in World War II to Earth 1. Cool. And promptly put away his costumed identity because he learned that there were no costumed superheroes on Earth 1 in the 40s. So there you go. There's a few minutes of nattering on about that little half-visible headshot at the bottom of the cover. I apologize to all of you, all of my fellow wonks out there who were probably just shaking their fist at their at their iPods or their laptops or however they listen to podcasts these days for my omission there. I'm sorry.
There's a major Commander Steel fan out there that listened to our episode, had to go through rows and rows of characters waiting for you to talk about it in that last episode, and it wasn't.
Murdo! But there we go. Amends are made.
Good. And by all means, please listen to that episode, especially because there might be characters that we talked about on the cover that are going to show up in the issue that we are not going to give as much detail. So if they haven't showed up in the Crisis before, or if there really isn't much to say in regards in their placement within the pages, we may just say, oh, that's so-and-so, go listen to our cover episode, or just assume that we talked about it, or, we're not purposely trying to skip characters, but this is a chunky episode, so we're trying to keep concise.
Mm-hmm. What episode of ours is not chunky?
Yeah.
Yes, and this is the first time we've taken 3 episodes, at least. We don't really know how many episodes this is going to take us to get through the issue itself. Yeah. There is that very large, dense, character-rich 2-page spread around the middle of the issue that we're going to have to get past here. But yeah, it's going to be at least 3 episodes to get through this issue of Crisis. Right. So, as always, please do bear with us.
I'll just say again, Crisis Tape celebrating 10 years, December 6th, 2009, depending on when this episode airs. So I think, that's a lot of fun that we're getting at least 2 episodes out so far. And for those people who've had to wait years, this is our little gift, I guess you could say.
Our 10th anniversary gift to all of you.
Yeah. And real quick, sorry to take another 2 minutes.
Take as many minutes as you want,
all right.
Peter.
Not to date the episode, but have you received in your hands the Mark Waid History of the Marvel Universe comic?
I have the first 2 issues.
Yeah, and what do you think so far?
I think it's great. I think it's very much following in the footsteps of the History of the DC Universe by Wolfman and Perez.
Right.
It's basically just it's an illustrated chronology. It's just Mark Waid writing all these little blurbs about stuff that happened in the course of Marvel history from like the beginning of all existence. It takes like the first issue is everything before the Age of Heroes, basically lots of prehistoric stuff like the sinking of Atlantis and cosmic entity things, various pantheons of gods, and then we get into the world of men and superheroes, and it's just it's very. I'm using this word a lot in this episode, but dense. It is textually and factually dense, and that means that I love it to death.
And it has those annotations in the back.
Which is even better.
Yeah, where it's almost like a throwback to what they did with Marvel Saga, where they went through and actually clipped out little panels, regardless of when an issue was created, right? So if they were talking about the origin of Iron Man, they went back to the Don Heck stuff, but then they might go into like John Romita Jr. stuff,
Yeah, because this history is not always told chronologically in the comics.
Right. So it is a wealth of information, and it's quite beautiful to look at too. So I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, who's the artist on that again?
Javier Rodriguez. I want to say, if off the top of my head, yeah.
Sounds right.
Yeah. All right, so this is, as Adam said, the start of Act 2, which covers issues 5 through 8. And once again, just to say, like we did last episode, but because we're actually talking about this issue, there is a Crisis 4.5. We are not talking about it because it is not in... We're taking Crisis in a publishing chronology.
Right.
Not in a story chronology, because it helps to... factor in where things got layered, and hindsight is kind of important with later issues, so we don't want to get there yet.
Yep, we're going to, keeping with the chronological theme, we're going to mortar in the crossovers, more or less in order, too. After we're done with our episodes about issues 5, 6, 7, and 8, we will then go back and talk about all the crossovers that were published within that time frame, more or less in the order they were published. Right. And eventually, way down the line, once the entire Maxi series is under our belts, we will get around to talking about a lot of post-crisis stories that harken back to or spun out of the main Crisis text. And we will absolutely talk about that Legends of the DC Universe Crisis 4.5 issue at that time.
In episode 16, you said we'll be done with Crisis, I assume the 12 issues, by 2025. That was the year you gave. Hey, if we keep the track record we got going now,
but it's not always going to be our 10th anniversary.
Well, no. But at least, we keep going with the way we're jonesing to record. Who knows? We might get some... We might not have any more of those year pauses. You never know.
We might...
Hope's high.
I have rarely been guilty of such optimism.
All right. That's enough preamble, I think.
Right.
So if you've never listened to these episodes, what we'll do is I usually throw it to Adam to just sort of surmise sections, right? Like if we get into a scene, we'll surmise a couple pages, and then we'll go back and dig deep per page. So like for this issue, for this first page, we'll probably just talk about this first page.
Right, because it is a scene unto itself.
Right. So if you want to go ahead and take it away.
Well, sure. Not too much to do here. I mean, it's just a little conversation between, it's mostly the Anti-Monitor ranting and raving and seething because he realizes that for some reason, despite having apparently eradicated Earth, the universes containing Earths 1 and 2, he has not received any kind of increase in power. And meanwhile, the Psycho-Pirate is hanging around and whining, as he always does, and the Anti-Monitor is threatening him with violence, as he usually does. And in the background, you see the inert form of the Red Tornado held in some kind of a stasis beam upright in a zone of total darkness. We've been able to see a couple of ill-lit features of the Anti-Monitor stronghold. And again, pointing out that we don't really know that the main villain's name is the Anti-Monitor at this point. By the end of this issue, we won't even know that he's called the Anti-Monitor because he'll introduce himself by a different name. But so the main adversary in the story, who remains very mysterious, he's not even speaking in word balloons. He's speaking in white lettering against stark black, long, narrow panels. which is just kind of an ingenious page composition, I think. And you get a couple of quick little images of Psycho Pirate in between times. But so the adversary is fuming and contemplating and machinating, and it just kind of helps to set up the status of the villain, his as yet ill-formed awareness of the gambit that the Monitor executed at the end of the last issue. In fact, we, the reader, aren't really aware of what's happened yet as of this first page. But we know that the Anti-Monitor, the adversary has been thwarted, and he's trying to figure out what's gone wrong and what he needs to do next. And we're reminded that he's got a couple of aces up his sleeve here in the forms of his lackeys, the Psycho Pirate, his captive, the Red Tornado, and also the Flash. And I think this issue is the first time we actually see the Flash in the clutches of the Anti-Monitor. We didn't. He just kind of disappeared in issue 3, and he's been popping up in different times and places, kind of out of phase with the space-time continuum for several times in the first few issues. But I think this is the first time that we learned that at some point the adversary captures him. This page, I think, is the first time that's even mentioned.
I should check my notes. I wrote here we probably should have done a recap of at least the last issue, but just quickly to just say Earths 1 and 2 died.
Or so it seems.
Or so it seems. And I think we even talked about, whenever we talked about whatever part that was for issue number 4, we did say that those versions of Earths 1 and 2, as we knew them, are no longer the same. Even though we're going to find out that they still exist, we will never see their like again, the way they were presented, pre-crisis. So that's how issue 4 ended. That's how Act 1 ended.
Yep, Monitor was dead, and it looked like there was nothing that could be done to save those two universes from oblivion.
Right. Pariah was crying. The heroes were trying to save their respective universes from all kinds of things, and that was pretty much it. So that's why we're opening up this issue with the adversary ranting and raving. And go ahead.
No, did you have more general remarks to make?
Yeah, just we're using the same panel construction here. Every time we go back to the Anti-Monitor's lair, as you said, very dark panels, very horizontal, very claustrophobic panels.
Exactly the word. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a terrorist effect, kind of. It's sort of like a stratified effect. It's almost like you're being sucked down into the core of the earth through like the mantle and the crust and so forth. And yeah, it's a great way of making even like an infinite black void feel restrictive and threatening.
Yeah, I even wrote here. The panels are diminishing, much like the DC universe at this point. From many become one. You could even go back to Crisis number 1. A multiverse that should have been one became many. And here we're seeing, a lot of panels that are trickling all the way down to the title logo down here.
Yeah, subtly reinforcing the wrongness of that which is supposed to be one split up into many smaller pieces. Yeah, good catch there, Peter. Right, so in the first of these narrow little slices of the void, the first words spoken by the villain, again, his words in white superimposed directly on the darkness, as if the scene is set in a dark place, coextensive and synonymous with the villain's own will, where the villain himself is all. And he's saying, "It is done. The first 2 prime universes are gone, but why has my strength not increased?" It's reminding us that one of the reasons why the Anti-Monitor is taking the trouble to destroy all these universes is that he is then able to absorb their energies, their life forces, whatever you want to call it. He annexes them all into his own antimatter realm by negating them, reducing them to antimatter, and then just kind of sucking them into his own realm. His antimatter universe expands as the positive matter multiverse contracts. It's something of a zero-sum game. And so he's addressing the Earth 1 and Earth 2 universes as the first 2 prime universes.
Yeah. Interesting that he calls them prime universes, which is true. They are. I mean, we're
in one sense, yeah. The prime is kind of a loaded word because
right.
elsewhere in the multiverse,
there is an Earth prime, But in certainly in publishing, DC publishing, I mean, we will later, thanks to Wolfman and Morrison and other people, Earth One really will be, or at that point, is it Earth Zero? I don't even remember. Will be sort of like the bottom of the orrery of worlds, right? You knock that down, and the rest of them.
John's, I think, conceived it as something of a pyramid.
Okay.
Yeah, and with Earth One kind of at the apex of that.
Yeah. But it's kind of cool to hear him call them both prime universes. Mm-hmm. And what about that? The first three, it is done. Very biblical, right? We've been throwing back some dialogue to biblical kind of feel, and that's certainly one of them.
Without question, he's drawing on the language of biblical and other apocalypses to help create the feel he's going for. And one has to kind of wonder, though, in what order the Anti-Monitor has been doing this. I mean, these are the first two prime universes, and he hasn't saved them for last. Somehow there's exactly three other universes left. As it's near the bottom of the same page that's brought up. But why go after Earth 1 and Earth 2 at this time, and why simultaneously when all the other universes he's destroyed, he's done one at a time?
I guess maybe if you go back again to Crisis 1, each Earth being weaker as individuals rather than becoming the whole, right? So maybe along the way, there's a way to sort of say the Earth 1 and 2 universes, because of the concentration of the heroes, just makes them stronger, so he has to suck up all those weaker universes to really go after Earth 1 and 2.
Well, I can easily understand that, but that's still... my question was, why not do those last, then?
Yeah, totally last, right, other than 3. Because Wolfman still hadn't figured out to this point what Earth 4 was going to be, right? Because we talked about how Blue Beetle showed up in Crisis 1 with a caption that said, heroes from Earth 1 and Earth 2, which was wrong. Because, at least by that point, we still didn't know that the Charlton heroes were going to be pushed to Earth 4.
I guess he was he was still taking into account the possibility that maybe the Blue Beetle and the other Charlton heroes have just been on Earth 1 all along, and we just haven't mentioned them.
Right. And probably because at the end of Act 1, would we have been sad about Earths S, X, and 4? I mean, yes, but to the degree that Earth 1 and 2, the ones we've been reading about, gone forever. So I can say from a story point, obviously it makes sense, I guess. Cliffhanger sense.
I will accept that explanation. All right. And then Stratum 2. Here's where I turn my attention to the credit box at the bottom of the page, because Marv Wolfman is, of course, the writer and editor, and George Perez is the penciler. But joining him for the first time this series as inker is Jerry Ordway, who has been a fan favorite artist for years and a personal favorite of mine for a long time. And all you need to do is look at the Psycho Pirate's face in that second panel. He's the only one speaking in that panel, and just his facial features and the placement of the ink lines. That's a very... That's Ordway style right there. It looks more like an Ordway image than it does like a Perez image to me.
Yeah, the melding of their art, their collaboration is their melding of their styles forms a collaboration. I think that is pretty damn good. I'm usually not always a fan when when you can see the inker style on top of a penciler style. I think of someone like, look, he's a legend, but Klaus Janson sometimes over certain artists that maybe aren't like a direct match, you can clearly say, okay, that's clearly Klaus Janson, right? So, but this one, I feel like, number one, it needed something a little more consistent because we've had Dick Giordano, we've had Mike DiCarlo, who's a little heavy-handed. So Perez gets a little lost in some of that stuff. But now we have Jerry Ordway, who's a great penciler unto himself.
Oh, definitely.
Right. So if Perez takes a little shortcut here and there, Ordway can come in and sort of, tweak whatever needs to be tweaked. and yet still make it this really beautiful collaboration. You keep the Para stuff, you see Ordway stuff, and now we finally get what I think of as the Crisis look. By issue number 5, it takes all of 4 issues to get there. Even though we knew, as we found out in our interlude episode, that people knew that Ordway was going to come on as an inker as far back as issue 2's release, because it was in one of the Amazing Heroes. I think some of the artwork is, it's Para's artwork, but it's a little rough, the first 4 issues in some spaces, in some places. The design sense is there. It's beautiful. But here's where it really starts to go, this is it. For me.
Finally gels here. Right. And so in this first Ordway inked panel, the Psycho Pirate is whining that his boss promised him enhanced motion controlling powers and a world he could reshape. And the boss continues ranting and, as Shane would say, pontificating. He's trying to reason through what has happened here. He says, the Monitor is dead, yet his energies have not flowed into me, which is something that the adversary had intended to happen. That's one of the reasons why he kidnapped and brainwashed, possessed the Harbinger to kill the Monitor, not just because the Monitor is his eternal enemy and the one most likely to stop him in his campaign of multiversal genocide, but also because just killing the Monitor will make him stronger and will help him finally put paid to the 2 prime universes. But despite the Monitor's death, the adversary has not gotten stronger. 2 universes are gone, yet I have not received their power, he continues, reiterating what he was saying in the first panel. And then the Psycho Pirate cuts in again and says, please tell me what's going on. I can help. Haven't I controlled our 2 captives? Last we knew, they just had the Red Tornado, but now there's 2. You haven't told me. Why did you need them? You have me. Yeah, he's just total...
Ever the henchman. Ever the sycophant.
He's like a middle kid, And then his overseer says, you are rapidly outlasting your welcome here, pirate. Even your powers can be replaced. Okay, and then he lays things out a little more clearly for the pirate and for us, the readers. Both you and the Red Tornado shall serve me, and these captions are kind of bookended by a full-body image, very small, only about an inch high, of the Psycho Pirate on one side and the immobilized Red Tornado on the other. The Flash is the only being capable of traversing dimensions unaided. I could not allow him to be free. So there you go. There's confirmation that he has the Flash in his thrall now, too. And also pointing out that Barry Allen is unique among beings in the multiverse, apparently, and that his super speed abilities alone, apparently not Jay Garrick, not Johnny Quick of Earth 3, but only Barry, has the kind of super speed, and I can't say connection to the Speed Force because that wouldn't be a concept for another, 10 years after this, that only he has the ability, even without his cosmic treadmill, to zip himself between multiverses just by adjusting his internal vibrational frequency. So it's kind of a palliative to Barry's fans, many of whom probably had gotten an inkling that Barry wasn't going to survive this maxi series. That their hero was, it's kind of a consolation to them that he's special. That he may not live to see the end of this, but he was one being in the DC universe who was able to thwart this major villain's plans.
And this is, so let me cut in on that, because I think this is a great place to cut in with, we've been talking about it in some of the previous episodes about the work that Peter Sanderson did for the Crisis, where he went and read every DC comic and took notes. And I feel like there have been a lot of instances where Marv Wolfman has taken those notes and made them into something. And we'll find a few of them later. There might have been some of that going on in the first 4 issues. So, like when we got to the Great Disaster and we got to Commandy, when we got to Anthro and his girlfriend was pregnant, but she wasn't pregnant in the series, and we talked about how Wolfman might have taken some of that information and sort of said, okay, well, what would these characters be like if we progressed them a little bit had their title still gone on?
Exactly.
Right? I think there were a few more instances like that too. So I feel like this comment about Barry Allen about the Flash is another one of those moments where Wolfman looked at maybe some of those notes or looked at the larger DC universe and decided to draw a line and say Barry is the only one who can do that on his own power. I certainly haven't read every Silver Age Superman comic, but it does make me wonder if Superman ever did that, or if there were any other characters. And maybe there were, maybe there weren't. Where there was a character that did that, he's on this page, and it was in one of his early appearances. So the Red Tornado, I don't know if you ever read his first stories.
I read his very first story.
Okay.
It's been a couple of years, but I do know that after that, he ended up going to Earth 2 and petitioning for membership in the JSA.
So this is from JLA, Justice League of America, Volume 165. I can't remember if that's his first appearance or not.
I can find that out right now.
So in that story, you have his creator is who's his creator? Not Tio Tomorrow.
It is.
Oh, it is. Okay,
Well, yeah, you're thinking of Professor Ivo. He created a Mazo.
That's what I was saying. Get my androids confused. So what's his first appearance there?
JLFA number 64.
Okay, so it's this two-part story, and Tio Tomorrow he attacks the Justice Society first, and then I don't know if he uses his powers to then attack the Justice League. So it's a team up, one of their team up stories.
Mm-hmm.
And in it, Red Tornado, there you have this little. He has to travel from one Earth to the other, and it says here it's from Justice League 65, rotating his body with ever increasing vibratory pulsations. The Red Tornado sweeps into the dark zone barrier between Earth 2 and Earth 1. Later in the issue, it's also called the Black Interterrestrial Space, also called the Dark Buffer Zone. And then he even carried the JLA to Earth 2 through that zone later in the story.
Much, much later, it would be called the Bleed.
Yeah, right, yeah. So I think that's interesting that here's a character that in its earliest form, maybe that's something that they just needed for the story, right? And then they forgot about. But I would think Peter Sanderson read that, might have made a note of it. Wolfman might have seen it and go, yeah, we're not going to worry about that. We're going to make it that Barry Allen really, at this point, for my story, for this DC continuity, it is going to be Barry Allen.
Well, I could try for a no prize or Baldy, if you'd rather. All the other characters need to rely on some kind of mechanism or some kind of super scientific machine to get from one dimension to the other, like the transmatter cube or the cosmic treadmill, etc. So why don't we just say that Red Tornado is his own miraculous machine?
That's great.
Yeah, and technically, since the Red Tornado is just like an elemental being called the Tornado Champion, like Ulthun, the Tornado Champion from the planet Ran, we could say that he is just riding inside of this humanoid vehicle that allows him to vibrate his way from one universe to the other. There's our out.
Yeah, but but then again, and as we'll see later on, I think you're coming to it where Anti-Monitor says Red Tornado has powers which will allow me to control my new universe. He will be reshaped as my tool. I think it's interesting, whether it's coincidence, whether it was Wolfman paying attention to. I think it's interesting that Red Tornado is here. That it is not only did he need the Flash, but he needed the Red Tornado. Up until now has just sort of been a character, not anybody. We haven't gotten to the elemental aspect of him yet.
I think we had learned by now, though, that he had the Tornado Tyrant / Champion inside of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
As part of the Jerry Conway, Chuck Patton?
No, George Perez. That was a George Perez drawn issue.
Was
a couple
it?
issues, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would very much have been on their mind, I would think.
Oh, you know what? I'm thinking of the Earth 1, Earth 2 Black Canary thing. That was Chuck Patton.
Right.
Okay. There we go. Another Earth 1, Earth 2 confusing saga. But yeah, that's a very good point. This Red Tornado is kind of one of the first Silver Age characters to really straddle the two Earths and kind of move from one to the other.
Yeah.
Or migrate from one to the other.
We talked about that on the cover. He's the first one on the cover. The first face.
Yep, surely not an accident.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to. My note here was on that panel where the Anti-Monitor mentions the powers he has, which will allow him to control his new universe. My question was, what powers are those?
I wrote the same thing. I said, what powers could they be? But maybe this is part of Wolfman's plan of saying, okay, let me look at the DC universe. Let me look at all these notes. Okay, maybe they did know that they were going to try to redo the Red Tornado post-crisis. Maybe because eventually he shows up in what, Firestorm? No, is that when he first becomes the Elemental, or is it even way after that with Primal Force?
No, in Primal Force, Red Tornado is really very little more than just a kind of a piece of junk.
Yeah. Okay.
He's lost the ability to speak. He can barely think. He just kind of he makes these weird rattling and clunking noises as he soars through the air. He looks more like a scarecrow being blown through the air. His limbs are all herky-jerky, and he's identified as like the wind elemental of Earth safely before that.
Okay.
He might have been mentioned as such in Swamp Thing, but not really developed more than that until Firestorm, as you said.
So maybe this is part of his Wolf. Like I said about Anthro, that he was going to say, look, if somebody wants to take this, I'm going to show that the Red Tornado is a more powerful being than we've ever seen him in comics. He's got a friggin' tornado in him, like a real natural force in him.
A sentient cosmic storm.
Yeah.
In a mechanical shell.
So for the Anti-Monitor to think that he's so important makes me feel like Wolfman thought that perhaps there might be something more to do with him.
Yeah, I think I said something in my thesis about all this, or at least about the Red Tornado and his role in the story, and I don't have the thesis with me, so nothing to be done about that. Well, maybe I'll come back to it at a later time, because the Red Tornado will... There are more important scenes than this for the Red Tornado's role in this thing, but my overall impression is that... going from the Anti-Monitor's quote here about his powers, my feeling, based on that and other things that we'll see later, is that Wolfman never really solidified his plans for how to use the Red Tornado, and whatever he might have, or whatever several different things he might have had in mind or been thinking about doing with the character, I don't think he did any of them.
Yeah. I mean, because his story gets wrapped up in this issue later on quite quickly, and not to any degree that the Anti-Monitor is saying here. So.
Yeah, he just turns him into a big spinny tornado thing and sends him to beat up the good guys, and that doesn't even work. So, I mean, I can envision, based on what you were saying about how the tornado went from Earth 1 to Earth 2 and all of that, maybe Anti-Monitor would have had some idea to use him as a cyclotronic vibratory stabilizer to keep his new patchwork antimatter universe together. But, we'll never know.
Right.
So there's that. And then after that, we get a panel where the Anti-Monitor says, still, there are 3 universes remaining. There's your confirmation that there's 3 more after the first 2 prime ones that are missing. Without the Monitor, their destruction is ensured. Panel after that, now comes Psycho Pirate, there is work to be done. And then there's a tiny little strip of just black ink, just as all to itself. And below that, a very different voice of fate chimes in. It's not the Anti-Monitors, although it's rendered in exactly the same way. And it's saying, DC Comics presents. And there's your title there in the...
That's the Wolfman.
Did the Wolfman send you?
Yes.
That is a Grant Morrison Animal Man reference, folks.
Right. And we mentioned Marv Wolfman and George Parrish. We got to give it up to John Costanza. I mean, for this page alone, right? It's got to be hard to figure out how do I got to do white on black, probably doing some kind of inverted kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. It's probably easier than it looks.
Yeah. And then also colorist Tony Tollin, both of whom have been on the series to date. And, we always talk about the detail that Perez has. And what it must be like to ink it, but also what it must be like to color that.
Oh, man, you make an excellent point, Peter. Because Tony Tollin really had a Herculean labor ahead of him here. Of all these characters, all these costumes, all the reference he must have needed to use. And he didn't get through it without a few mistakes, as we'll see.
And then, of course, Bob Greenberger, associate editor.
It was a pretty important crisis-ophile and DC historian in his own right.
All right, so now let's cover 1 to the next. Well, I guess we could do 1, 2, 3, 3 and a top, 3 and like a line.
Right, because like the top 3 panels of page 5 are kind of a part of the same scene.
Okay.
Okay, so on pages 2, 3, 4, and the top of 5. This is the aftermath of the death of the Monitor set aboard his satellite, which continues to spin around a couple of Earths, I guess, since they're kind of phasing together. Can't really say that it's in Earth 1 or Earth 2 space right now, since there's no such thing as either anymore. So the Pariah is there. He's still kneeling over the smoking carcass of the Monitor. Harbinger has reverted to her more human Lila form, and she's now in control of herself. The Anti-Monitor's power over her has been broken, and so she too has a chance to bemoan what she has done, to be horrified and aggrieved to a great degree over what she apparently has done to the Monitor. But then the Monitor appears on a monitor and and it explains that, oh yes, don't cry, Lila. Everything that you've done has been according to my will. You don't blame yourself. In killing me, you have fulfilled my last wish, and you've saved 2 worlds. And he just explains at some length that this was all a part of his master plan to activate his vibratory towers. Only his death would release the necessary energies to do all of this. So he saved the 2 Earths from obliteration, and of course all the other planets. The 2 universes in Earth 1 and Earth 2's universes have been saved, and they've been shunted into a netherverse created of the Monitor's own substance. And then Lila just continues to weep as listening to her benefactor, her father figure, explain to her that there's no time to mourn him. This has all proceeded as he had foreseen. Don't blame yourself, but be strong for me, because there's much that I still need you to do. And so she and Pariah listen to all of this, and then to provide some further clarification, here we have Alexander Luthor of Earth 3 shows up at the bottom of page 4. First time we've seen him in his full-grown adult form, and he's now clad in that slick golden armor that he's going to wear for the rest of the series. And he explains further that the Monitor managed to, as he was rapidly growing, I guess the Monitor is not really responsible for his growing so rapidly to adulthood. That was never really explained in this story. And it's something that Jeff Johns probably could have tapped into when he used the character in Infinite Crisis much later. But nope, he just did. It's just the way his half-matter, half-antimatter body works, apparently. He grew physically and mentally, though not necessarily emotionally, from childhood to adulthood, infancy to adulthood, in the span of however much time has passed between issue 1 and issue 5. And here he is. He stands before Monitor and Lila. Before Pariah and Lila. Saying that the Monitor gave me some fairly incomplete instructions. I don't know everything that he wants us to do or that he had planned for us to do, but I know enough for us to start moving forward. First, let's mourn him. And they do for a panel or two, and they shoot him out into space. And then they're teleported. I'm guessing that Alex Luthor is the one that does that, because that does seem to be among his abilities, is to act as a portal between dimensions and between points in space. And they zap off to save the universe. And we're not really sure where they go to do. Actually, I don't think they do go anywhere. He's not teleporting them away. I think he's teleporting all the other characters to them, because 2 pages later we see everybody aboard the Monitor satellite in that big slamma-jamma of a 2-page spread we've been talking about. I think that panel, the panel 3 at the top of page 5, is just him bringing everybody to the satellite.
It's so interesting. I mean, for the longest time, I just thought that was Monitor's body continuing, going to somewhere, like hitting wherever the hell they shot him off to.
I don't know. You'd think,
for Wolfman trying to say, nothing is going to exist anymore. We still got this limbo that the satellite's in. Are we to assume that it's the same limbo that the worlds are in? Like, this is just Monitor's limbo,
like the titular limbo.
Yeah, Alexander Luthor has a limbo in him that we'll see later. I mean, there's just so many of these empty spaces just floating around. I mean, we even see we're jumping the timeline. We see a limbo, a nothingness when they try to go to Earth 2 later, right? Like, there's just nothing. But that's still, nothing is still something, So, yeah, it's all these random places that still exist.
Yes, places that are not places between places.
So I have a theory about Alexander Luthor's growth. Now that you were talking about that, if we go on a very primal, maybe even a meta way, and you have Anti-Monitor on one side, you have the Monitor on the other, both created during Krona's experiment, right? Weren't they born out of Krona's experiment? I think because the
Well, yeah, born out of what he did to creation at that point.
Yeah. So you have their respective universes pretty much forming them, like forming these champions, right? You could almost look at it like that. And then you have this character, Alexander Luthor, who, as he was traveling from Earth 3 to Earth 1, Monitor said something happened, something changed. And what we'll find out later is, he has the ability to have both positive and negative, or matter and antimatter in his body.
Mm-hmm.
So, because this is a war between matter and antimatter, and he straddles both, and one side is getting more powerful than the other, could it be the positive matters? Could he be the avatar of the in-between? Could he be the in-betweener, like Marvel's in-between? I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
He could be, but then he'd be a little more sympathetic to the Anti-Monitor's side of things.
Well,
he'd probably be trying to broker peace as opposed to just trying to defeat the Anti-Monitor.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I mean, that's what I was sort of trying to think. Is it because he becomes powerful because the antimatter side is winning, right, more or less, but yet the benevolency of the positive matter, maybe the positive matter side is why he grew up, because they're like, we got to get him to his prime state.
Well, yeah,
quickly.
Wolfman needs to get into his prime state too.
And that too, right? Yeah. But I just wondered. I'm just sort of throwing it off the top of my head. Maybe, you could sort of like. You could kind of make it all make sense. Everybody's an avatar of something,
Mm-hmm.
Even Harbinger is an avatar of. We talked about her being able to split herself, and she's more powerful as one being than she is as the separated beings, which is very much like the Earths and the universes. So maybe that could be Alexander Luthor's role.
Yeah, one of my challenges when writing my thesis was trying to figure out what everyone was an avatar of.
Yeah,
and I know I probably read some passage from my thesis about him when he first showed up, but I compared him to the archetype of the puer aeternus, the eternal child. He's like he's the inverse of that. He's the puer brevis, the ephemeral child whose youth was sacrificed. He was forced to grow up in the twinkling of an eye for the sake of saving multiple worlds.
Right, and in some ways, I hope I don't offend him, but wasn't that Jesus? Like we go from a baby to 33. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but he got to live those years that we just don't know about.
True, but that's what I mean. We don't know about those years, and I feel like we don't know about. Why did the universe had to make Alexander Luthor older? If he's like the personification of the bleed, as you called it, earlier. But
he's kind of that.
Yeah.
He's also the personification, more on the meta level of lost childhood.
Yeah.
Since that's kind of what this crisis is going to be doing, invalidating a lot of stories that a lot of DC fans loved when they were kids.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. So it'll be cool to look at his dialogue through that lens, which I don't think I've ever done before. So, as we go through it, that'll be fun.
And then read Infinite Crisis and see how Johns kind of deals with the antimatter side of him, the dark side of his personality.
Yeah, see, it sort of gives it he's like his own Antichrist, he's his own anti-Luthor. Because I think we talked about that before, right? Didn't we talk about the whole, it's so interesting that the last son of Earth 3 is a Luthor, right? Like already you're spinning the whole... The whole formation of the DC universe, you're trying to put it at the foot of a Luthor. Mm-hmm. And Grant Morrison, the way he put it was a Luthor is always going to be a Luthor, like an Earth 3 character, even though they're good.
Right. On Earth 3, being a Luthor means something a little different, since that's kind of the reverse Earth.
Yeah.
So he's like the super messiah who came from Earth to someplace else, as opposed to the Kryptonian messiah who came from Krypton to Earth.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Fun stuff.
It's all fun.
Yeah.
All right. So now we go back to the beginning of the scene and start breaking things down even further. We got this at the top of page 2. This great little title treatment here, which sets the scene because there's the Monitor's satellite in its usual burnt orange up there in the upper left, next to in bright blue the title of the issue, "Worlds in Limbo." That Classic kind of Starfield graphic filling in the letters of the word limbo. And then below, somewhere in space and time is the establishing caption, which is as good a description as any, really. But somewhere outside of space and time might actually be even better, since they're now apparently in this netherverse. And the pariahs, they're crouching over what's left of the monitor, and he's, of course, weeping and whining and wailing, which is pariah's stock in trade. He thinks he's alone now, since he's not aware yet that Lila's still with him. Gone. Monitor, you knew you were going to die, he says. Why did you allow it to happen? Worlds no longer exist. Everything is gone except us, except me. And then he hears the voice of Lila, because Harbinger has now reverted to her pink-clad, fringy-sleeved human alter ego, Lila. And she's becoming aware of what she, in her alter ego as Harbinger, possessed by the Anti-Monitor, has done. She says, no, tell me it's not true. He can't be dead. He mustn't be. Pariah, showing what a class act he is, comes close to grabbing her by the arms and shaking her. Like what are you jabbering about, woman?
From Airplane.
Yeah, they're all lining up to
smack her.
Yeah, this series could use a Leslie Nielsen cameo, don't you think? All right, so yeah, it's 6 parallel, very, very long, narrow, vertically oriented panels. Good Parisian layout here of just these two characters coming to grips with what's just happened. Just letting giving free rein to their emotions. Before the sudden turn happens at the top of page 3 when the monitor speaks up from beyond the grave and says, Lila, if you can hear me, do not grieve over what you have done. Lila says, Monitor, you're alive? And Pariah says, impossible, I know he's dead. And sure enough, he's right.
Right. Well, before you get to Monitor's monitor tape, a couple things about that page 2. Pariah saying it's a classic comic book thing of somebody turning and going, but he's never met Lila before, and so I thought it was a little bit, unless he's referencing, maybe he thinks he has some idea that she might have been Harbinger or anything. I just thought it was a weird sort of dialogue thing, 35 years later.
Yeah. He probably recognizes the voice and is kind of surprised to hear it at all, since I think he assumed Harbinger had... I'm looking up here what happened to Harbinger.
She she falls down into.
Right. She plummets down. I'm looking at page 22 of issue 4, down this very long panel into just a long shaft, a chasm. So it's kind of. But she seems to be waking up on page 2 of this issue on the floor just a few feet away. Yeah. So I can understand why Pariah would be a little surprised.
And the monitor does call her Lila in that sequence, so maybe Pariah hears that, and even though she doesn't say her name. But one of the things I liked about this page 2 is how very different Lila and Harbinger are, right? She even says, I am her or I became her. So we felt that certainly in terms of the issue itself, where Lila is a little more soft. Harbinger has a purpose, has a mission, is a little direct, more direct, I should say. So we see that now, and as you mentioned, she's free of her possession of the shadow demon at this point. I just liked that difference. I like that difference in the two characters. It makes me think. We don't ever really get a story like that, but is it a Shazam thing? Is it a Miracle Man thing, where it really is two separate beings? Because remember in issue 1, she had to go into something. She had to go into a matrix of power to become Harbinger, right?
And after that, it's just kind of instantaneous.
Yeah, and I think some of that is when the world's... Well, no, it's in this issue too. Yeah, she becomes Harbinger again. Yeah, that's right. Interesting.
Yeah, next time we see her, she is Harbinger, so yeah. She could have gone to the machine again, I guess. But
yeah, so it's just interesting. I think that little bit of dialogue is kind of curious.
Yeah. Well, part of it is the fact that she had the Anti-Monitor's shadow spawn within her, so in that respect, she was definitely a split personality. Yeah. Probably more so than when she normally turns into Harbinger. And also, just the fact that she's more concerned about the Monitor, whereas Pariah is worried about what's going to become of him now that the Monitor is gone.
Right. Well, Pariah is. What else can you say about Pariah?
Yeah. And they call the wimp Pariah. They call the wimp Pariah. That's the proper key, but it's that comes directly from Perez. That's
that's right. The convention where you met.
yeah,
him?
like the second New York con when I was actually cosplaying as Pariah, and Perez told me I was the only person he'd ever met who had done that.
Oh, nice.
I've got a picture of the two of us
Yeah, I
screaming
remember.
together,
Yeah.
and he told me that they used to sing that little song spoof from Paint Your Wagon. They call the wimp Pariah around the DC offices. They didn't have much respect for the character either, and
Perez was a musical theater buff. I mean, he used to do community theater musical theaters.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. He used to design programs for a theater that I guess his wife used to do costumes and.
Oh well, yeah, because she also was a belly dancer.
Yeah. And I think Perez played. He might have been the lead role in Lil Abner at one point or something. I can't remember. I thought I remember seeing a picture of him in a show. So, so he would know that. He would know that.
Well, that's pretty awesome, and I hope that community theater company has a complete collection of his programs on file someplace, because they could fund a couple years worth of shows selling them to collectors. Well, that's a cool thing to know about Perez. A general note about this scene as a whole, and also kind of some other images set aboard the Monitor satellite for the rest of the issue. There's a lot of blue used in the background. Tolland's original colors, just to show like portholes or view screens or something. In the hardcover, those have been recolored brown, and I don't think it's in any way an improvement.
No, and especially when the satellite is orange. It sort of makes sense. Orange and blue are complementary colors, I believe, so it sort of makes sense that, you go with blue.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, and then, so the monitor shows, it's another classic Perezian, video monitor panel kind of thing, since he just loves using that as a mediating device in his artwork. Just showing the similarity between the comic panel and the view screen, and how both of them sort of mediate the viewer or reader's perception of the content being displayed. There's a lot of that throughout the story, and here's the monitor appearing on a monitor, more better living, or in this case, better dying through video. And here's where he explains to Pariah and Lila what has transpired, and why they should not feel too badly about it, because his death has meant, Harbinger's murder of him has meant the salvation of two universes. And he tells Lila that he was aware that she was possessed, and she allowed everything to happen the way it did, and, quote, by doing so, you fulfilled my last requests. There were worlds still to be saved, yet my machines were not ready, my power source not yet complete. Still, I had to move quickly, thus I arranged for my death to be at the very moment I activated those machines. So, and then there, the third panel in the bottom row on page 3, you see a close-up of those friggin' vibratory tuning fork towers that figured so prominently in the first few issues, and then suddenly became a lot less important once we get to this point in the story. Yeah. So we have a little flashback to Lila as Harbinger firing the fatal energy bolt that kills Monitor. Monitor says in his voiceover, my body died, yet my essence lived. Killing me, Lila, released all my energy. Then we get the image of the tuning fork tower. Energy which would do more than just power the vibrational forks. It was a mad scheme, and it may yet work. Hear me out, for I need you still. That takes us through page 3. And he continues his little monologue on screen on page 4. The first panel, he's saying, out of my very being was created a netherverse, one which has temporarily absorbed your two universes, Earths 1 and 2, and all their respective planets exist within me. And so there you see an image of like the humanoid outline, surrounded with Kirby Crackle energy dots. I guess it's supposed to represent the Monitor's superhuman energy essence, out of which this netherverse was created, and you see two different long streams or chains or garlands of planets streaming into him, and so here we have it's more like sacrificial God or Messiah imagery, and how his out of his very being, he created a haven for these two universes. it's almost like a Eucharistic image. This is my body given for you.
Well, right.
Live in it for the remembrance of me. And it also kind of brings to mind some of Morrison's Final Crisis ideas later on. He talks about the overvoid and how the very first monitor, the primal monitor, became aware of like this almost bacterial presence within itself that turns out to be the DC universe. Like stories were he was infected with stories, and he started to pay attention to it. So these Earth 1 and Earth 2 now existing within a universe, a plane of existence formed of the monitor's own substance, kind of brings that to mind. So that's perhaps maybe it was this panel that Morrison read that got him thinking along those lines.
Right. So before we go on, a couple things I wanted to get to, at least that panel about what you just said about the universes going into his body, because I think that will help form some of these thoughts. There have been a lot of times where the monitor has said, okay, I have a plan. Oh, something happened. I gotta have a new plan, right? So I feel like the Harbinger possession probably was another version of that, right? Even though he says, I was aware of your possession, I knew what was going to occur, I let it happen so you could fulfill my last request. So it just feels like another kind of like, okay, all right, well, I guess
Plan C.
Yeah, that's maybe he always knew he had to die, but now he was, it's like, I'm sorry that Harbinger's got to be the one to do it, but she's got to be the one to do it. Maybe this is maybe it actually in some ways was easier because what was he going to do? Ask her to kill him? No. But
just let his enemy take her over.
Yeah. Or maybe he thought there was going to be a meetup with the enemy or something, and that was when he was going to enact everything. But
kind of an Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader scenario.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing sort of even feels like Harry Potter.
Voldemort?
But with, oh God, I'm getting so old. My memory.
Dumbledore
versus Snape.
There you go. Where he turns to Snape and says, "Severus, please."
Yes, right. And you could take that please many different ways.
Yeah, they
right?
set that up in advance.
Yeah,
and I've always taken it to mean, please do what we talked about earlier.
Right. And so I just think it's interesting that I've been trying to keep track of these plans. They've been constantly changing, but that's because situations within the crisis have been changing. And I took that little dialogue as part of that. I wrote, he said my power source was not yet complete. We don't ever know what that power source was. Maybe it's just him talking about himself. Who the F knows? I don't know. It was a mad scheme. That's when I wrote, but was it his original scheme? Okay, so when he says in top of page 4, temporarily absorbed your two universes.
I made a note of that too. Who's he talking to here?
Yeah, and he says it again too, right? It's his universe. Earth 1 is.
Well, that's true. He was born on the moon of Oa, so yeah, he was born in Earth 1 specifically.
He says it later. You'll get to it too. Where does he say it later? Oh, he says, I've used my energies to calm your populace. And I'm like, this is interesting. I don't know why Wolfman decided at this moment to kind of pull him away. Now, we haven't gotten his origin yet, so maybe that's why. Maybe I just answered my question. We haven't gotten his origin yet. So
maybe he'd planned for this video to be played not just in front of Lila and Pariah, but in front of everybody that he predicted they would be gathering at the satellite.
Or maybe at this point he still didn't know that he was going to be born on the moon of Oa, right? Maybe just at this point, maybe he just thought he was some nebulous being.
One thing we can agree on is that the characters who are hearing this recording at this time are not from Earth 1 or Earth 2.
Yeah. Yeah, that was just interesting. That was so. I'm glad you took notice of that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I wrote down. I've used my energies to calm your populace also, but it wasn't the your part. It was the using the energies to calm, because we'll see some reference to that in the next couple of pages.
Right.
How time and space are going insane, and yet people are relatively calm.
Yeah. There's a lot of emotionality in this whole series.
Mm-hmm. The crisis we face is a crisis of emotions, which is why Psycho Pirate is in there so prominently.
Okay.
Not just of the characters, but of the readers too.
Yeah.
Meta level there. Okay, so let's see. So yeah, for the moment they survive, but in my haste to save the worlds, all times become one. I've used my energies to calm your populace. We just covered that. But because my vibrational forks were not fully attuned, because my enemy forced my hand, there we go again, thinking on the fly, having to constantly change his plans. The worlds are still in danger. The vibrations which separate the universes are slowing down. The universes are merging. Yes, but not in the good way. Not in the way that will be finalized by the end of the maxi series. They're merging in the explodey way. Yeah, they'll occupy the same space at the same time, and they will destroy each other. He says as the monitor's image fades from the screen. And there's one more sentence that echoes in the empty observation deck of the satellite. I recorded these words before you came. Farewell, Lila. Remember, I love you. Just one last little emotional gut punch as Lila breaks down into tears, practically just biting down on her thumb up there in the third panel. The monitor meant a great deal to her. Yeah, she's come a long way from being the ditzy secretary to this guy. So there at the bottom of page 4, she's kind of cradling the monitor's beetled brow in her hand, and she's saying, he used his last power to save us all. I love you, Monitor. I only wish I had told you that before. And then enter Alex Luthor with his glorious red afro and his shiny armor-plated long johns, and he says, he knew it, Lila, and he loved you. And Lila's genuinely surprised, and she says, who? Because this is the first time any of us are seeing Alex Luthor as a full-grown adult. I think the last time we saw him, he was maybe biologically 10.
Yeah, I was going to say 10, 11, 12.
Yeah, and I don't think Pariah or Lila were present in that scene anyway. So here he is.
Harbinger was, because they were both looking. He was in that little bubble, and Harbinger's like over here, and then Storm flies away because she's possessed, and she's like, okay, whatever. Yeah.
But now he has fully come of age. He introduces himself again to them and to us. I am Alex Luthor, the last survivor of Earth 3. The Monitor saved me, then discovered somehow I am both positive matter and negative matter in one. He left me with instructions how to save the worlds that survive and those about to die, but first, a proper farewell for the one who made the greatest sacrifice of all, this, the Messianic Monitor. And on page 5, the first panel, then we get that image of his corpse getting shot into space, which seems kind of, yes, exactly. Yeah, that movie came out in 1982, so it was fresh in everybody's memory. So I am positive that that panel was inspired by. You could practically hear Amazing Grace playing.
Bagpipes.
Yeah, it just seems like they probably should keep the body just for security reasons. I mean, there might be some lingering energy residue in it. The anti-monitor might be able to get it and use it against them, or maybe at least desecrate it. Just take an antimatter piss on it or something.
I skipped it in my notes, but look, I mean, there's tons of energy trails off of his body, like little smoky things. They even, on page 3, it almost looks like it connects to the monitor, the image of the monitor itself, right there on the second panel there.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of like swirls up, and it's a little off panel, but it looks like it's the same energy.
Yeah, it's being projected from that screen thing behind it, but the projection could be, brightened or clarified by the energy it's absorbing from the monitor's still smoking corpse. Yeah, that's a good point. Looks like it's exactly the same energy. It's the same color anyway.
Yeah, same swirliness.
All right, but anyway, appropriate or no, they fire his body out into the netherversal void and turn around and think about other stuff. Yeah, that panel is blue in the original issue. They make it white in the hardcover.
Oh, okay.
And again, I think the original is better. Okay, and then we see these.
Although it would match then the Worlds in Limbo page, if you sort of want to, sort of keep the consistency of what's outside the monitor being the satellite being nothing. Maybe that's what they were trying to go for in the collection.
But I'm not sure it should be white though, because that's the antimatter color, and they're not swimming in antimatter. They're in netherversal amniotic fluid. All right, but anyway, so then in the middle panel in the top row there, we see the three of them just looking, mournful, lugubrious, And Lila's clasping her hands and saying, "I loved you. I truly loved you." And then we cut to the opening sequence of the ABC Sunday night movie, and the pulsating light strobes. It just reminds me of the Star Tunnel opening sequence of that from like the early 80s. And again, this is 1985, so could have been an inspiration. And so we get the twinkling strobe effects. "The universe must be saved," declares Alex Luthor. "We can show our love by fulfilling the Monitor's last request." And so, poof, and 2 pages later, everybody's on board the satellite. But first, a couple bits of interlude.
Yeah.
So one
Let
quick.
me. Can we go back? Yeah.
Oh, by
A
all
couple
means
things.
do.
I thought it was good just to kind of go all through it again. So he talks about the Monitor fork, or he talks about those forks. They hadn't been fully attuned yet. I almost wonder. Let's see. The vibrations separated the universe are slowing down. Universes are merging. I almost even wondered if maybe there were other places that the forks might have been placed. Because we talked about why were they put in those specific places, right? Earth 1, Camelot of Earth 2, the Great Disaster, the Wild West,
Ancient Atlantis.
Yeah, so like they're kind of dumped in heroic ages, more or less. I think that's what we kind of surmised.
Yep, places where DC Comics have been set in the
Right.
past.
So, and again, it goes back to his whole plan. Everything just sort of going on a whim, but. I think do we get any more mention of the forks? I guess we'll see. So it was just curious that, just trying to make sense of them. That's what I was trying to do in all that dialogue that he placed there. And I do have a thought that I'm going to save for a little bit later about that and also some other stuff. Let's see. The whole idea that they're merging, and when they merge, they'll destroy each other. We've seen that as early as All-Star Squadron, a couple issues of All-Star Squadron, where the Spectre was trying to keep Earth 2 and X from merging, I think. So I think that's the one.
Really?
Yeah, it's around issues like...
Oh, the mid-30s?
Yeah.
Well, that's when the Freedom Fighters popped up in that series for the first time.
Yeah, I think it was that, yeah, because it was a whole... Oops, I forget who they were battling, but the Spectre was there. Like, in fact...
Didn't he do something like that in one of the early, like, Silver Age JLA and JSA
I'm
stories,
sure.
too?
He was always throwing planets around on covers, bonking people on the heads with them.
Yeah, he'd come a long way from just being a ghost cop by then. He was... Right. He was cosmic class, no doubt.
Yeah. So I thought, when you see that image later, when you see him later in the Crisis of being very, sort of big and with planets around him or whatever, that made me go back to the All-Star Squadron issues. But then this dialogue did too. The whole thing about when planets merge, if they're not synced, they are going to explode. And I was like, oh, right. That's we saw that in the Roy Thomas penned story. So I like that there's consistency there. I mean, I guess it's general DC science, but I did like that. With the Monitor gone, but now Alex Luthor in tow, we now have a new Crisis Trinity. The Crisis Trinity before, we talked about on the cover for issue 4 with Harbinger, Pariah, and Monitor, but now we have Alexander Luthor. So they're going to be the new Trinity bringing us into the story. But my big question is, where the F is Lady Pariah? Lady Quark.
Well, we see her one more time in this issue, but it doesn't really tell you where she is or what she's been doing.
Like, where did Pariah drop her off from when he saved her until he popped up into the Monitor satellite? That's just so bizarre.
Like, we never really got much explanation as to how he was even able to do that.
Right.
I think we can assume that it was part of the Monitor's grand design.
Yeah.
On page 19 of this issue, we get a quick look at her. But it's a good point.
Yeah,
where the hell has she been?
Where's she been? Does he have a pocket universe inside him too? Like, does everybody in there? They just all have... they have like Superman's cape has that pouch. He has a pouch. He's just keeping her in his pouch.
I always keep a spare universe for emergencies.
Oh, I already mentioned that. The whole thing about where the hell did Monitor's body really get sent to? Yeah, we talked about that. I was trying to figure out why Perez drew Alexander Luthor with this yellow metallic jumpsuit, skin suit kind of thing, and I really didn't. I don't have an answer. I think it's just He looked at he looked at Monitor, Harbinger, Pariah. They all have very metallic elements to them, and he just sort of kept that theme going.
It kind of makes me think of Quard.
Oh,
Since they've got a connection to the antimatter universe, which is spliced into 50% of his DNA, I guess you could say. Sure. So since Sinestro's ring is yellow and the Quardian Thunderer's weapons are yellow, it's just kind of it seems to be the color of most of the antimatter alloys or ores you can find in that universe. So that's the best I got anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. It's the thing that probably helps to contain whatever it is that's within him, or it's the barrier between whatever. Or I don't know. Yeah, totally makes sense. Yeah. Okay, that's all I had.
Okay, so now we get this little mini scene, which is kind of directly connected to the scene on page 1. It's the same long, narrow, horizontal panels. White lettering directly on blackness for our main villain's dialogue. This is the second half of page 5, and the villain is saying, "Damn him, now I know what he did." So he's figured it out. He's finally up to speed, and he knows everything that it's taken us 2 or 3 pages of exposition to learn.
And if he can listen in, why wasn't he just spying on the Monitor before this while he was like figuring it all out in the first place?
He's got a lot on his mind.
I guess. Psycho Pirate's babbling too much.
Yeah, he's a distraction. But that fool in dying only delayed the inevitable. I'll have those worlds yet, but there are still others to conquer before then. So he's now turning his attention to those 3 universes which he saved for last after the 2 most important ones. And the Psycho Pirate is saying, "You still haven't told me what I'm supposed to do." And the Anti-Monitor patiently explains, "The last 3 Earths will be your playthings, Psycho Pirate, but for now you may play with our human guest if you wish, just do not slay him." Psycho Pirate says, "At last," and boop, suddenly Barry Allen is there with them. So this is the first time that we've actually seen him in the adversary's lair. And Red Tornado is still
floating.
Yeah, yes, still deactivated and just hovering in the background. And Barry demands some answers, and Psycho Pirate obliges. He says, "Sure, Flasher, sure." Reverting to criminal speak here. You see, the world, our worlds, they're all screwed up now, and that's significant because we've got an Earth 2 native in Psycho Pirate and an Earth 1 native in Barry Allen, and a character who's arguably of both, Red Tornado, in the background. They're all screwed up now, living at all times at once, and the people are scared, Flash, just like you, right, Flasher? Scared out of your wits. And Psycho Pirate, I just love the way Perez draws him in that last panel down there, where he's lifting his cloak up on either side of his head and just exulting in his power to induce fear. And Barry Allen just dissolves into a quivering, gibbering heap on the floor, screaming, "Don't hurt me." And the final line on the page comes from the villain, who says, "Play as you wish, Pirate, but very shortly you will have 3 Earths to control, all for me." So a little more foreshadowing there as to there are 3 more universes to go here, folks. And I guess folks are placing their bets as they were reading this for the first time as to which 3 Earths are still floating around out there.
Right. Because at this point, you could surmise X and S. Well, yeah. X and S have both been named by this point, right?
Yes. Yeah, we have taken our first trip to Earth Shazam. Oh, a couple of them, actually. I'm not even sure if... Yeah. I think it was dubbed Earth Shazam or Earth S. I think it was Roy Thomas who finally gave it that designation. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm wrong. It was not. It was, Justice League of America number 194 to 197. Oh, Crisis on Earth S was the story.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was written by Marty Pasco with a lot of input from E. Nelson Bridwell. We covered it in the Spotlight on Shazam in the Bronze Age. So, yeah, it was definitely named Earth S by then. I apologize. It was not Roy Thomas who came up with that, although he preferred to call it Earth Shazam as opposed to Earth S. But he did do a Earth 2, Earth S crossover in All-Star Squadron, where we finally got to see Captain Marvel versus Earth 2 Superman.
Right. So, what other Earths could readers have maybe speculated on? I mean, at this point, we still don't even know about Earth 4, or even that there's a potential that it could exist. So, in their brains, what are they thinking? Earth Prime, which we haven't really seen to this point.
Not in Crisis, no.
Yeah. Even though some people say the opening scene probably takes place on Earth Prime or could take place on Earth Prime, but it's not like it was named. What do you do? Was there an Earth? I don't know. In all those weird Justice League issues, like the Earths that we talked about, there might have been some other names that just aren't as important.
A few one-off Earths.
Yeah.
I mean, there was Earth A, but that was really more of an alternate timeline than a true parallel Earth.
Yeah.
There were ones. There was a Justice League story that involved I Earth, R Earth, and M Earth, which were parallel Earths where insects, reptiles, and marine creatures became the dominant life forms.
We need those Earths.
How could they do those classics in off panel? But there were probably longtime readers who were throwing out possibilities like Earth B, which had long been a speculative fan construct for all those Bob Haney, Brave and the Bold stories that seemed to defy the continuity of either Earth 1 or Earth 2.
Yeah, because we don't even get Earth 4 in this issue.
No.
So,
but we definitely do in the next one.
Right. Finally. I love all the red costuming, right? It just goes to show about, color, 4-color comics, right? And look at all the red, because these are very old characters. Red Tornado, Psycho Pirate, Flash, a lot of red, a lot of yellow, a lot of blue. Well, on Red Tornado, there's blue, but a lot of red and yellow, so I do love that. That panel that you mentioned with Psycho Pirate lifting his cape, I love how the black parts of his costume just blend in with the black of the background.
Almost reminds me of Kelly Jones.
And there's really, again, to show what a master Perez is, this panel is what? Maybe 1.25 inches tall or whatever?
About that, yeah.
And look at the perspective. Flash is in the foreground, then you have Psycho Pirate sort of in the background, and then Red Tornado even a little more behind him. You can clearly see the eye going back, right? Your eye just goes all the way back to that. And it's just this tiny little panel. Just really great. Just some really great artwork going on there. I have a question about where is Psycho Pirate's mask?
He doesn't seem to have been wearing it much.
He just had it. Harbinger gave it to him in the opening sequence, and then did he use it when he tried to control Arion? Orion?
Well, I'm looking at that sequence now, and he has it, but he's wearing it, and this is in issue 2. He takes it off, and he's laughing, and he makes Pariah laugh, which is supposedly has calamitous consequences, but he's blasted by Arion before we get a chance to see what those consequences should be. And then another page after that, Psycho Pirate is defying everybody, and then he gets teleported away by Anti-Monitor to his lair, and that's the last we see of the mask. Maybe we can assume that the Anti-Monitor does something to him to internalize his control of the emotions, so that he doesn't need to be wearing the mask so much anymore.
Yeah, and I just like the fact that he gives Barry fear, but I almost wonder if he because I think there were some stories where Psycho Pirate can sort of sense what you're feeling, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah, so he's just heightening what he's already feeling off of Barry Allen, because Barry, you can see his face; he's shaking when he first shows up.
Well,
right?
So would anybody, really.
He's got those motion lines, and so I like that. I like that he was able to. That's how I take it. He's like sniffing fear on him. He's just going to make it even more so. And that's it. That's all I had on that sequence.
All right, and now these messages. Another little one-page interlude here on page 6, and it is more of the use of video monitor imagery and the mediation of the television news media. And it's narrated by a part of the vanishing pre-crisis scene, Lana Lang as TV reporter. Because that would not be her vocation in the post-crisis reality to come. But pre-crisis, Lana Lang showed up in Metropolis quite some time ago, back in the Silver Age, and got into long-lasting rivalry with Lois Lane over Superman's affections. But here she's just the roving reporter on the spot, and she's reporting on what's happening on Earths 1 and 2 as not only the two realities, the two planets begin to merge, but all their respective histories merging, kind of slipping in and out of phase. So the first panel is just Lana there, the rounded corners of the panel to show that you're seeing this on your TV screen at home. And she's talking into her microphone. This is Lana Lang for WGBS TV News, Morgan Edge's Galaxy Broadcasting System, assuming we are still transmitting in this strange new world. And apparently so, because somebody's seeing this on their TV. Reports have come in from... time has seemingly come together. I'm not really sure in what order I should be reading this. I guess we follow the...
I take it as the word balloons and then the narration.
Yeah, the jaggedy word balloons going down from the panel. Because that's a continuation of what your home viewer is hearing through his or her RCA Victor TV set. Okay, so time has seemingly come together. The past, present, and even the future all exist at once. Perhaps mankind is stunned, bewildered, or even in some state of shock, but there is little panic. Thank you, Monitor. As he said, he was going to calm the populace with some of his remaining energy. Then we switch to captions over this nice big panel here at the top of page 6 next to the video screen. Reports have come in from everywhere. Something has happened. Something has happened, do you think? There was a flash of light, and then everything we've known was changed. Still, 20th century Earth seems to prevail with intermittent flashes of past and future life. Just kind of like Earth 1 reality seems to prevail in the merged post-crisis single universe with flashes of other stuff coming in. So in this scene, I'm assuming this is happening in Metropolis, because that's where Lana Lang is based as a reporter, and you see all kinds of funky aircraft flying through the sky, some very futuristic. There's like a triplane from World War I, something that might be like Earth 2 Wonder Woman's invisible jet. Who knows? And then down on the ground, you've got these futuristic metallic edifices. You've got thatched 17th century cottages. You've got people in a horse-drawn carriage. You've got a cowboy in the foreground with his 6-shooters. And you've got these dinosaurs. A little bit of artistic license being used here because they're a little bigger than history has told us that theropods were. They look like they're about 7 stories high. And might as well point out at this point that they're blue in the original comic, but they're amended to green in the hardcover. Also, and then this applies to the whole issue and probably the whole series, the lightning bolts streaking through the sky around the flying machines. They're outlined in black ink in the original, and they're just kind of undelineated, just streaks of color without any black borders. And again, I'm not sure that that's really an improvement over the original, but I will take the green dinosaurs over the blue ones. That makes a little more sense. Anything to point out in the first couple panels here, Peter?
Smaller thoughts. Let's see. Intermittent flashes of past and future life. So I guess we're to assume that things are kind of strobing, maybe? Yeah.
Seems like a good word for it.
Yeah. I used to always take it as sort of like everything was just kind of there, but that makes more sense. And it even kind of alludes to issue 2 where Anthro saw the Legion of Superheroes time. He got knocked on the head, and then he's looked up and is like, oh, there's a futuristic city. What the hell is that?
And then a stampede of mammoths end up in Legion headquarters.
Yeah. So it's kind of, they're still using that same sort of, even though this is totally a different situation because these two universes are basically swirling around each other.
Right.
And as we said, basically this page is putting to picture what Monitor has just talked about. So I don't know, whether it's Wolfman's idea, whether it's Para's idea, whatever, somebody's idea of, okay, let's personify exactly what's going on. We're not going to spend too much time right at the beginning of it, but we're going to show you exactly what we mean, and this is the best we can do in comic book form right now. It's just to, come up with some futuristic cities, come up with a primordial volcano, come up with dinosaurs, and this is what we get. That cowboy person... Could it be Batlash? Because he's got a white jacket and a blue hat. I think there might have even been an annotation that said it was Batlash, but I could take that as being Batlash.
Yeah, that's who I assumed it was, too.
Yeah, okay.
There's probably more than one cowboy in the Old West of these two Earths that wore white, but this is the one that we, the readers, know the best.
Yeah.
So, sure, call him Batlash.
And we are, just like comics, as you mentioned, we're in Metropolis 1, Earth 1, even though technically both the Earth 1 universe and the Earth 2 universe are definitely having this time crunch. We really only sort of stick to Earth 1. We see Earth 2 a little bit later, but we're very Earth 1 centric in this story, and that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah, seems like most of the parallel Earth stories have been Earth 1 centric throughout DC's history. So naturally, Earth 1 will come out on top. All right, Lana continues. One is forced to wonder, and in those time eras, do they, too, see glimpses of our life as we see theirs? Historians from all ages are conducting interviews, but among their questions is, if time is ever corrected, will any of the knowledge we have gained still be known? These are some good, pointed, cogent, and salient questions that Lana Lang's asking here, and I can tell that this is Wolfman, pondering through her. I mean, this is the lifelong comic fan and second-generation science fiction fan, and also writer, Wolfman here. You can tell he's just aching to explore the full ramifications of this vast cosmic sprawling situation that he's concocted. He knows that it raises all these questions, and the writer in him longs to just spin this out for a few more months. But he's only got 12 issues to work with and a lot of stuff to pack into those issues as it is. So the best he can do is pose these theoretical questions, even though he's dying to write stories that answer them. The best he can do is just toss them out here in a couple of captions and keep moving forward. And as Lana is talking, we see first an image of another sort of chronological pastiche here of you see a Neanderthal man in the foreground, a couple of ordinary bystanders, two people behind the wheel of like an old Jeep. It looks like one of them dressed like a sea captain. I don't know. Those could be characters from like one of DC's old teen books, for all we know. Like Here's Howie or something. And we also have an American Indian couple and their small child next to a teepee. Their skin tone looks fairly Caucasian to me, which that could just be a coloring mistake. But it leads me to wonder if that might be Tomahawk, like later in his life. And he went to live among the Plains Indians and took a wife named Moonfawn. And if that little dark-haired youth clinging to his mother's robe there, he might be Hawk, son of Tomahawk, as a young shaver.
I mean, Perez was drawing the Who's Who covers and probably had tons of reference. In his mind, he could have been just drawing stuff and going, "Ha, nobody's ever going to know who that is, but I'll know."
Yes, and I hope I wonder if he wrote all that stuff down, because otherwise it will be lost to the ages. And then we have a little panel of Batman of Earth 1, and with him, the Huntress of Earth 2. These two characters have met several times in the past. She, after her father, the Batman of Earth 2, died, she was kind of desperate to connect with some piece of her father, so she made a couple of sojourns over to Earth 1 and got to know her Uncle Bruce on Earth 1. And there with them, I guess that's supposed to be Earth 2 Robin, but he really looks more like an Earth 1 Robin to me. He looks fairly youthful. There aren't enough lines on his face. The mask is kind of the wrong shape.
Yeah, I think we have to take it as Earth 2 Robin, who is usually drawn with the domino mask going around the head, more than just being a domino mask right around the eyes.
It's more like a bandana almost.
Yeah, and later in the issue, we see Jason Todd, but he's not dressed as Robin, so it wouldn't make sense for him to be up there and then change when he gets back down.
That's the only reason why I'm not arguing harder for this being Jason Todd in this panel. But yeah, also the mask is recolored black in the hardcover, where it's more obviously green in the original. And then there's another little panel of biplanes and hypercraft and submarines and schooners, and just weird juxtaposition. Then there's another really interesting combination of characters. Sinestro, Sergeant Rock, and Nooklon of Infinity Inc., all looking flabbergasted. And then Lana continues, WGBS, as well as all other communication services, will remain on the air during this entire crisis. This is Lana Lang for WGBS TV News, praying whatever has happened to our world be resolved quickly and safely. And one more weird little panel full of strange bedfellows, a pterodactyl, a zeppelin, and some pilgrims on a rooftop.
Yeah, I think I take this sequence because Lana and the dinosaur panel, all the panels are rounded, but the character panels are not rounded. I think what maybe they were trying to suggest, but it might not be so clear, is that they are watching that from the satellite, right? Is that what you got? That they're watching it, and then when we turn to the double page spread, we it's sort of like a build up. It's almost like a cinematic build
Oh,
up.
they're all already on board the satellite.
Yeah,
actually, that didn't occur to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that does make sense.
Because when we get to the satellite, which we're coming up on, we stick with a lot of the characters on the satellite. We stick with our new Trinity, but then we still get those flashes of Lana Lang and Lois Lane talking. So I feel like it's almost like Ozymandias with all his, various monitors. All that's just going on in the background while they're talking to Harbinger and Pariah. And they're just trying to keep an eye on what's going on in the real world. So that's kind of how I take this page. It's like a lead up to it.
Yeah, this is the 80s.
Yeah.
Having pointed out two very important mid-80s comics texts, both of them making extensive use of video monitors.
Yeah.
It just speaks to the zeitgeist, how that decade contributed to the division of human consciousness as aided by electronic media.
Well, especially because news went global, right? Like when you think of the development of not a local news station, but there was talk of whoever the child was that fell in the drain and how that became one of the first sort of mass media. There was a network totally devoted to that. 24 hours of just, are they going to rescue baby, whatever the baby's name was.
From the well.
Yeah, so I think maybe that has a lot to do with it too, like you're talking about. The news is suddenly instant and global, and you can watch it 24 hours, just not at 6 o'clock,
And how that gradually shaped human thought processes.
Yeah. And comics.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And Lana mentions Crisis. Mm-hmm. So we don't quite get it as a title just yet. I don't think we've gotten it yet as we do later, but
eventually they start referring to it kind of assumes an identity of its own.
Right. Look at that. Halfway through the episode, well, our normal 3 hour, we are finally at this here it goes. Good luck.
Yep. Fortunately, there's not that much story stuff to deal with on pages 7 and 8, but there's an awful lot of footnoting to be done. So, I don't know. Do you want to deal with all the peoples on the pages first, or deal with the stuff that's being said?
Let's do the text. Let's do the text first. Yeah.
All right. So now we've got a whole bunch of. They're not even all superpowered or costumed entities. Some of them are just your basic soldiers. So which does kind of make you beg the question, from an in-universe perspective, from looking at it metatextually, it's obvious why they're there because they've been the stars of many DC comics in the past. But in-universe, you got to wonder why a bunch of dog-faced soldiers like Easy Company or the pilots of the Haunted Tank would be considered important enough by the Monitor or Alex Luthor or whoever to be selected to be brought aboard the satellite. But some of them are. But these are all combatants from throughout time and space in these two universes, the universes of Earths 1 and 2. Now, Earth 4 is right out, as we've said at this point. It's just these two universes who are stuck in the Netherverse. As the caption across the top of these 2 pages explains, they were spread across the worlds of Earths 1 and 2, those with powers from many lands and many times, as different as the abilities they possess, but bound together by those very powers. Now they are aboard the Monitor's ship, floating in some limbo that exists neither in time nor space. So, there you go. It gives the lie to what it said on page 2, somewhere in time and space, which was also sets the scene aboard the Monitor satellite, which is also where all these people are now. So, are they in time or space or not? And the first word goes to Ralph Dibney, the elongated man, who says, "Holy cow, what in the world happened? One second it looks like everything's going to go kablooey. The next we're aboard the Death Star Squared." Timely reference. See? So we've had our little nod to Star Trek the movie, and now we've gotten the Star Wars trilogy, which is just concluded 2 years prior to this. After all, Return of the Jedi came out in '83. And it is Harbinger. Lila has, since the last time we saw her 2 pages ago, resumed her guise and powers as Harbinger. She's floating in midair above the whole assemblage, and she's saying, "Elongated man, please hear me out. There are those of you who know me, because all of the summoned are there aboard the satellite. There are those of you who know me, most of you do not. I am," dramatic pause, "Harbinger, and there is a story that must now be told." And then Alex Luthor, who's standing on an observation deck or a little catwalk, addressing the throng, same platform where the Monitor had once stood. "Harbinger's right. The world, all worlds, have been brought here to save you. You've seen the destruction, you know the end was near, but you do not know why or who was behind it. We do." And then Pariah, just as you've said of them, Peter, they're the Trinity now, so they're all kind of speaking with one voice. "Alexander speaks the truth, and so do I. I am Pariah, and I've seen 100 universes die, and probably quite a few more than that, too. Please bear with us. What we have to tell you is beyond all belief, because if you don't hear us out and believe, your worlds, too, will join the others in extinction." It's almost like a revival camp meeting here. "You must believe or face extinction." Preach on, Brother Pariah. All right, comments on the stuff that has been said on this page before we talk about all the people who are hearing it.
Mm-hmm. The same thing. I've seen 100 universes die. That number has floated. It's been infinite. It's been 1,000. It's been more than 1,000. It's sort of been floating all over the place.
Yeah.
So that language sort of got away from the Wolfman every now and then. The title is Infinite Earths, but yeah. So I wrote here, I feel like this is the next stage of the game, more or less. And I wanted to ask you, with all this, with this gathering of characters, I'll call them gathering of heroes, even though that's not what it is. But in the grand sort of like in the hero's journey, is there something like this, or in sort of, in apocalyptic terms or whatever, what is this gathering? Because we get this a lot later where people come together. I mean, whenever there's an event, you have to have that one moment of everybody coming together.
Right.
It happened in Invasion. It happened in Final Night, where everybody's got to come together and explain what's going on.
Marvel's been doing it for years, too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, I don't know Campbell's scheme well enough to say which of his archetypal steps of the hero's journey this might be, but it's definitely become a convention in American superhero myth making.
Yeah.
As you said, it's like every major crossover has this crowd scene where all the different participants, like everybody who's got their own comic at the time, pretty much, anybody who's considered relevant, is thrown together just so you can get a sense of the participation, just how dire the situation is that all these costumed characters are needed to lock it down. But I don't really know what Campbell would make of this.
Yeah, and I'm not even certain if that's the right theme that I'm thinking of.
You're talking about the hero's journey.
Yeah. And it's Crisis creating its own template, right? Like we've been talking about that a lot.
This was the first time any gathering of this size had taken place in comics.
Yeah, I mean, you could sort of count the Contest of Champions, that cover, that famous issue 1 cover of Contest of Champions. Certainly, Secret Wars.
Yeah, I was just going to say Secret Wars, but even that didn't approach. Was nowhere near this exhaustive. It was just like a sampling of characters from throughout Marvel's major.
Right. So yeah, just like the monitor, just like the anti-monitors, shadow demons, which have become something that most events seem to have, some kind of version of like duplicate henchmen.
Right, the disposable hordes.
We get this same moment, but oddly enough, too, in Forever Evil from the New 52, issue number 1, there is a villain version of this
Oh, yes.
where it's the Earth 3 or whatever they're the
Well,
just
yeah,
the crime
it's
syndicate
still
or
Earth
whatever.
3, yeah.
Where they're standing pretty much in the same sort of format with this little thing jutting out, and they're looking over all the villains. So I think that's the only time maybe this double page spread has been homaged, but I could be wrong. But it's such a clear, riffing of this moment. Dialogue wise, no, I don't really have too much to say. I'm glad we're at the point though where it is going to be explained as much as it can be at this point. You know what I mean? Like even Pariah's in on the act finally. It's kind of what I felt about Psycho Pirate. He's been whining for 5 issues. Please let him do something, and he finally does. At least in the next issue. So, it's a good moment. But other than no, I don't really have too much to say about. Maybe the one thing that when you read Elongated Man's, 1 second it looked like everything's going kablooey, and the next we're here. Like we've sort of taken for granted because we've just read 6 pages, and there's been stuff going on. But from the heroes or characters' perspective, they went from madness to blink. Where the hell are we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They don't know where it is, but at least it's stable.
Yeah.
The only remark I had about the dialogue was when Alex Luthor says, "You do not know why or who was behind it. We do." Do they really? I mean, do they know the nature of the foe they face? Do they know that he is like the dark twin of the Monitor? Or do they just know that it's some evil, godlike foe based in the antimatter universe?
Yeah. If they even know that. But yeah, because the Monitor, I think in issue 1, didn't he, or issue 2, didn't he often say like my enemy? Like when he was talking to the Great 15, the first heroes and villains that got assembled, I thought he said stuff like my enemy is acting fast. And
so they knew that it was
something.
Yes, it is. This isn't just a natural phenomenon. That this is something that's being perpetrated by a definite person.
Yeah, that makes sense. That
entity.
That it's a conflict. That it's actually something that they need to step up to beyond just saving Lot.
Right.
It's
not something that's just happening. It's something that's being committed.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because some of these characters, as you said, would know that. The Great 15 are here, more or less, if not all of them. Well, except for Blue Beetle.
Definitely not Blue Beetle.
Really, for me, some of the story stuff is in the imagery. I don't know if you want to go there next.
Imagery?
In the images, in the actual drawing of the thing.
I think we've reached that point.
Okay.
All right, so I leave it to you, Peter. Where should we start?
Just these are quick storytelling things. I love that you can see Perez's design of like the stretchers, Elongated Man, Mercury, Plastic Man, even Platinum to a degree.
Oh, we're not identifying the characters yet. We're just
no. I'm still like talking about some story
general
parts
overview of page
of
composition.
Art. Yeah, right. Because they're hitting the 4 corners, right? You got Elongated Man up there, Platinum down here, Mercury up there on page 8, Plastic Man down there. It's a nice, not only is the satellite framing this picture, but so are those characters, which is kind of cool.
It's exposition in the round, you might say.
Yeah. And here's some other little acting bits that are going on, which will probably help to identify a few of the characters. But on page 7, underneath Harbinger's feet, I love how Katana, Cosmic Boy, even some of the Easy Company and Gold of the Metal Men. Is he there too?
Yep, and he does appear to be looking at the same thing they are.
Yeah, they're all looking at Swamp Thing. They're all kind of reacting to him, which I think is kind of cool, right?
Well, he's one of very few horror characters that's aboard the satellite.
Yeah. Then you have sort of down at the end of Elongated Man's body, you have Aqualad and Aqua Girl holding Lori Lamaris, because I think there was the scene in issue 4 where all those Atlantis characters were kind of like, it looked like the water was just churning and they were like flowing all over the place. And the next thing you know, if we're to say what Elongated said, where they're just blipping in an emotion 1 second, boop, there they are. So that's kind of cool. A little bit of storytelling there.
Yeah. Plus the fact that she has no legs. I mean, somebody needs to hold her.
We have Cyborg and Changeling reuniting, which I love. That's something that Perez would definitely pay attention to.
bet.
Right down there at the bottom of, sort of in the middle bottom of page 7. And he's someone who I like that he's not necessarily even looking at what's going on above because he knows this. He knows some of this already. So it could even be like, okay, yeah, calm down, Salad Head. You need to pay attention. So I love that. The Sea Devils right next to them also probably pulled from water. You can see them lifting their goggles, and later on we'll see that they're still wet. They're dripping. It's amazing. Where is... sort of next to Lori Lamaris and that grouping, you have Duo Damsel and Bouncing Boy hugging, as they should.
Married couple.
Married couple, yep, love that. Mammoth is with his sister. I jumped at page 8. So if you look under the wing of Winged Victory, right where the Phantom Stranger is, you can see Shimmer, and she's got like a giant hand on her shoulder. That's Mammoth. Both of those characters of the Fearsome Five, enemies of the Teen Titans, and their brother and sister. And Perez is putting them together for very obvious reasons. A lot of this, what I'm going through is most of the characters just standing by themselves, but there are a lot of characters that are actually interacting. Here's the page on page 8 where you can really tell, yes, that is Robin of Earth 2. You can look at his costume design. It feels a little more like the Earth 2 Robin's later version.
Long sleeves, enough said.
Yeah. Even though he's not he doesn't look as old.
Well, not in that long shot.
No.
But, a little later on.
Lightning Lass and Timberwolf are together, standing side by side. They're right behind Batman, but her hair is colored yellow. It should be orange. It should be red. Did they fix that in the...
In the hardcover, they do.
Yeah,
that's one thing they get right.
Good. They're together, however, in Legion Comics at this time, they're not together.
No, they're not a couple.
They're not a couple, yeah. Also on that same page, where do we see Supergirl and Brainiac 5?
Under Pariah's cape.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're face to face, and they have long been kind of an item.
Yeah. And I like that it's not like they're hugging, they're just sort of, it almost is probably like the look on Supergirl's face is kind of like Brainy is going, Kara, oh my God, I'm so glad. And she's like, okay, we need to pay
Can you explain any of this?
Yeah.
You've always been good at that.
Yeah.
She's almost like demanding the way she's looking at him.
Yeah, or it could be like he's never really himself around her, so maybe he's being a little more emotional, and she's trying to say,
we don't have time for that.
We need to pay attention.
Oh, a couple of other couples there. You got Fury and Silver Scarab.
Yep,
You've got
the next one,
Starfire and Nightwing, of course.
Yep, beautiful. I love that she's taller than him, as she should be. Artists
every time. This is an alien Amazon.
On the cover of Heroes in Crisis 1, he is hugging her, and she's like almost a head shorter than he is. It's just not right. It's not right.
No. Do we have Rags Morales to chide for that?
No, I think it's Clayman. I think it's Clayman.
Oh, the Heroes in Crisis.
Heroes in
right.
Crisis,
I was thinking of Identity Crisis.
Heroes in Crisis, yeah. Lightning Lad and Saturn Girl, their Plastic Man is sort of spitting, his neck is splitting them, but they're together because they're the other Legion married couple. You have Batlash and Scalp Hunter near each other, not necessarily conversing, but we've seen them in a scene already in issue number 3.
And they're a couple of the few denizens of their century that are there, so naturally they'd be together. Johnny Thunder will probably find his way to them later.
Yeah. Behind them is Firestorm and Killer Frost, who also very much know what's going on. So Firestorm's not really paying attention. He's sort of still looking at Killer Frost there. And then Superman of Earth 2, right near Pariah's head and one of the hoof of Winged Victory. He is holding Dawnstar, which is, again, a holdover from one of the prior scenes where the Shadow Demons or... the atmosphere or whatever was going kablooey during the Great Disaster.
Right.
And she had gotten sort of knocked. I did put here, what are Big Sur and the Haunted Tank pointing and looking at? So they're at the sort of like where the mist is, right there on page 7.
Oh, yeah, they're looking into the shadows.
Yeah, like a void. Just sort of checking out the scope of everything, I think.
They're not reacting to Swamp Thing. That's for sure.
I mean, even Knucklon, he's even pointing somewhere. Maybe he's pointing to, like, Shining Knight or to another Infinite Ink member or something, since he's so tall. And as far as that kind of stuff, that's pretty much it. Tin, where's Tin?
Tin is right next to Alexander Luthor's chest.
Yeah, he has a little worried look on it. It looks like his hand is to his face because
Yeah.
he's always sort of like, squeamish.
Right, that's his personality.
Yeah.
He's a stutterer.
So those are like some of the story things I kind of picked out. Oh, look, there's Cinnamon next to Green Arrow. So there's another Wild West character there. Right there by Green Arrow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I see her.
All right. So beyond that, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? How do you want to? You want to just rattle off the rest?
I think we got to rattle them off.
All right.
So let's. I was thinking maybe starting with Deathstroke's boot and just going roughly clockwise.
Okay.
Yeah. How do we want to divide this up? It's like a quadrant. Or maybe I do the first half, you do the second half.
Yeah, just go start until you get bored, and then I'll take over.
Okay. All right. So yeah, right there underneath the left-hand side of that round observation platform that Alex Luthor is on, you see the orange leg with the blue leg with the orange Buccaneer boot. That's Deathstroke, of course.
He's got chain. It looks a little chain maily. The leg.
See kind of little lines representing the scales of the armor. So that's Slade Wilson there, another Wolfman Perez creation. And just to the left of that is Al Pratt, the Golden Age or Earth 2 Adam, in his latter-day post-1948 costume, when he's got the atomic powers going on. Down below him, you have the Qatar Hall and Shaira Thal, the Hawkman and Hawkwoman, because at some point in the early 80s, I think in a Bob Oxner written story, or arc, she adopted feminism and decided she wanted to be called Hawk Woman from that point on instead of Hawk Girl. So those are the Hawks of the Earth 1 universe. Below them is Steel of Earth 1. Steel, the grandson of the original, the Earth 1 Justice League member. Then next to him is Power Girl of Earth 2. Below her, the pink blobby guy is that's Plasmus, real name Otto von Fürth. He's a German mine worker who suffered a terrible accident that mutated him into this walking hulk of protoplasm that can cause human flesh to melt at a touch. He was a member of the Brotherhood of Evil who battled both the Doom Patrol and the New Teen Titans. Then below him is Catwoman, of course, the purple cowl with the ears. Selena Kyle. This is going to be the Earth 1 version because the Earth 2 version is dead by now. Then we have the Sea Devils, as Peter mentioned, in the red uniforms, lifting up their goggles and pointing at something. They're led by Dane Dorrance. That's probably he in the foreground. The redhead in front of them is Biff Bailey. And then the two off to the side are a brother and sister, Judy and Nikki Walton. So naturally, they're going to be keeping close together. There's all these groups, modeled on the Fantastic Four, you might say, or at least the Fantastic Four was part of the same tradition. They always seem to involve a brother and sister in there somewhere.
Well, and also sci-fi TV, Lost in Space, and right, don't a lot of those shows back then, didn't they? If it was a like the Swiss Family Robinson, and well, that was Lost in Space.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems sort of natural. High adventure, right? You put a brother and sister together, you put a man and wife together, or you put a whatever together.
It was usually the leader, his male best friend, his love interest, and the love interest's kid brother.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the Sea Devils are there. And then Peter mentioned Changeling and Cyborg. Above them, the gray guy is Block of the Legion of Superheroes. He's from Dryad. Everybody on his planet has a large physique and rocky skin. Then to the right of him are a couple other Legionnaires. That's Jan Ara of Trom, Element Lad in the pink and black outfit, and with him there is Dream Girl, Nuranal of Naltor. She has precognitive visions.
I love that they're together because we're actually talking about this on the Legion podcast I do. He's the leader at this point of the Legion, but she's not deputy, but she's someone who always has to be near. She always, whenever something comes up, she's like, "Where's Element Lad?" Like she's got to be near the top, right?
Always bending his ear. Huh?
Yeah, she doesn't want to talk to just anybody. She's got it. So I like that they're together there.
Well, she is a princess of her home planet, so maybe it's that such respect for chain of command. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Below her in the yellow cloak and helmet is, of course, Dr. Fate of the Justice Society. The red outfit with the blue column epaulettes with a big starburst on his chest. That's the classic DC character Captain Comet.
One of my favorites.
I like him a lot too, and not just because he has the same first name as I do. He's Adam Blake, and he is a mutant born 10,000, or was it 100,000? Well, several thousand years ahead of his time. And he's got like mental abilities, and he's physically superior to the average human being. He was like a big DC 50s sci-fi adventure character.
Yeah. I love that James Robinson in the Golden Age, not to spoil the ending of it, but which I don't, but James Robinson pretty much makes him the starting point of the Silver Age, right? Yeah, and I love that.
Whatever comes after the Golden Age.
Yeah.
Some people posit that there's like an interregnum period called the Atomic Age or something, which is basically the first half of the 50s.
But in the story, he writes, right, like look at them, fresh as like a gleam of silver or something like that, and it's like, it's so good, love it.
Yep. And Captain Comet is being the bellwether of a new generation of humanity. Basically, it's a perfect choice for that. Yeah, I agree with you, Peter. I love the way Robinson uses him in that story. And right next to him, the red helmet with the yellow leopard-spotted eyepiece on the front of it, that is Michael Payson Maxwell, the Boana Beast, making his first appearance in a DC comic since the 60s.
Wow. There's a lot of that going on and I'm going to touch on it later when we get to some of the smaller scenes about putting these characters together or bringing certain characters back, like and what that means for DC as a company, So that's I didn't realize that about him. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm going by what it says in my my ICG Crisis Index.
Oh, cool.
But it does say that his last appearance was in like a showcase appearance during that run. So apparently nobody had wanted to bring that character back between then and 1985. I would have thought he would have popped up in Brave and the Bold or like a whatever happened to backup story somewhere along the line, but nope. If we can believe ICG, this is the first time we've seen him since like 1967 or whatever year that was. Okay, so above his little helmet there, in the green tattered outfit with his arm stretching out to one side, that's Ragman. And then in the white suit there, that's Detective Johnny, Jonni, Thunder. A.K.A. Thunderbolt, Roy Thomas and Jerry Conway creation. She's on the front cover. In the blue star-spangled outfit in front of her, it's kind of interesting those two are so close to each other because they would become like a romantic item just a couple years later in Infinity Inc. That's Star-Spangled Kid, Sylvester John Pemberton, who was like the leader and financial backer of Infinity Inc. And he's got his arms spread like, what's going on here?
He's got his back totally turned.
Oh, wait, the camera's there?
He's probably trying to hit on Wonder Girl. Or maybe trying to say, hey, our team should team up. Make some money.
And Wonder Girl Donna Troy is having none of it. Then one of the Great 15 there in the pink and red outfit is the Firebrand 2 of Earth 2, Danette Riley. Then in the green and black mini dress next to her is Salu Digby of the planet Imsk, Shrinking Violet of the Legion of Superheroes. Her power, in common with all Imskins, is to shrink. In the gray prison jumpsuit and the red hair just off her rear end is Alexei Luthor of Earth 2. Then that little blob next to him is Proty 2 of the Legion of Super Pets from the Legion's future. Former pet of Chameleon Boy until he sued for liberation for himself and his kind. Then there's Platinum of the Metal Men. They're one of the 4 stretchers that Peter astutely pointed out formed the 4 corners of the image. Below her terminal coil in the blue top with little white things on it, that's Captain Boomerang, George Digger Harkness, a classic Flash rogue who's from Australia and is very good with boomerangs. The green suit there, of course, that's the Riddler, Edward Nygma, Batman villain. And then off, the big guy in the red and blue, whose foot is right next to the Riddler, that is Gim Alon of, I guess he grew up on Mars, but he's basically an Earth human. And he's Colossal Boy, and his power is to grow. He got that from inhaling, like, meteoric gas or something. The 2 guys off his elbow in the green outfit with the rooster comb on his head, that's Ral Benham of Mardru, Chlorophyll Kid, a member of the the always entertaining Legion of Substitute Heroes, who are a bunch of Legion rejects who formed their own little team of characters and eventually gained like official Legion reservist status. And his Chlorophyll Kid's powers are to make plants grow at a accelerated rate. He always carries a pouch of assorted seeds on his belt just to achieve various effects. I think he's the only Legion sub that appears in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you don't count Polar Boy, but he's already been promoted, I think, to the main team by this point.
Yeah, Polar Boy's in a wrong costume, though, at this point. He should be in his Steve Lytle designed costume at this, so that probably shows you how far in advance this issue probably was. I'll look up what issue Legion was at this point, but he should be in a different costume there.
And speaking of Legionnaires, while Peter looks that up, in the red and green costume next to Chlorophyll Kid, that is Jonav Rimbor, Ultra Boy, who has kind of a spotlight moment later in this issue. He has a number of different superpowers, the catch being he can only use one of them at a time. So he can be strong, but he can't be simultaneously invulnerable. So it's kind of like taking Superboy and chopping him up into bits, and you can only employ one bit at a time. In the blue costume beneath him, I was not sure about this one, but I consulted Peter last month when we recorded the episode about the cover, and he said that he's pretty sure that's the Persuader of the Fatal Five. His mask is a little off color there. It's supposed to be more white than skin tone, but
I think he doesn't have it on. I think that's what it's going on.
Yeah, that could explain it. And you can't see his Atom Axe.
Right,
because he said that's his thing. He chops stuff with this atomic axe that can cleave just about any material known to 30th century man.
So, Legion of Superheroes issue 13? Is that? I just looked it up and I already lost it. I see. No, yeah. At this point in Crisis, Legion of Superheroes 13 was out. The next issue, Legion of Superheroes 14, is when they get 5 new members, one of them being Polar Boy in a new costume by Steve Lytle.
Was Sensor Girl a part of that also?
Sensor Girl, Magnetic Kid, Quizlet, Tellus.
Oh, Quizlet.
Yeah, it's why you don't see them, obviously, at this point. But if we're also talking about this story takes place, quote unquote, 3 months after DC's published line, right? This story, we're sort of seeing a story that takes place in June or July of '85, but DC Comics at this time wasn't there yet. So, but Polar Boy is from the future. But
yeah, you can explain it all away by just saying, this is a weird collection of people taken from random points in time. So maybe this is Polar Boy from when he was still a sub before he joined the main team.
And it's kind of like Perez during the JLA Avengers miniseries, where at one point he said, all right, I don't care. I'm stopping it now. If they change costume anytime after this, I'm not changing it in the issue.
That's totally fair.
Yeah, I'm sure at this point he didn't even have the new drawing. So that's why Polar Boy looks like that.
Okay, so hovering above Ultra Boy and Chlorophyll Kid in the pink and blue, that is Wendy Jones, alias Windfall. She and her sister had been members of a group of kind of elementally themed and empowered villains called the Masters of Disaster.
Love them.
Who had battled Batman and the Outsiders, and Wendy was never really that comfortable being a bad guy in the first place, so eventually she took her wind powers and switched sides and joined the Outsiders, and her sister never forgave her for it. Then the lady in the white outfit with the pigtails just off Colossal Boy's shoulder, not too far away from her main squeeze Ultra Boy, that's Phantom Girl, Tinya Wazo of the phase world of Bixtel, and sometimes spelled BGTZL, sometimes spelled BGZTL. Drives me nuts. To this day, I don't know which is right. But anyway, her power is intangibility. And above her, also in white, is Zatanna Zatara, master magician of the Justice League. And next to her, in the pink and black outfit and the black hair, that's Cosmic Boy, Rock Kryn of Brawl, magnetic powers, founding member of the Legion.
Yeah. And by the way, Perez designed Zatanna's look in the Justice League issue where she...
He's the one who designed that costume. Mm-hmm. All right, with a little red lizard skull on her head. Yeah. Yeah, I like that costume.
It was in the Justice League issue where she was talking to Barry Allen. Barry had just lost Iris previously, like a couple months or a year prior to that. Oh. And they were cooking and flirting because they cut away and the food is still boiling on the stove and they're just sort of talking on a... Wow. Yeah, it was like almost like they were going to have a little love interest between Flash and Zatanna.
That is a thread that never went anywhere.
Yeah, a little creepy because she's young, right? I thought she was like a little younger, but whatever.
Yeah,
Who am
also
I to talk?
makes it more understandable why Barry would side with Zatanna and the Memory Wipers during Identity Crisis, which I'm just now reading, by the way.
Oh,
I mean, I read it when it was coming out, but now I've read back up to that point, so
Great.
I'm rereading it now.
Great.
So let's see. In the
good?
red and yellow with the sword, there's Katana, Tatsu Yamashiro of the Outsiders, and she's brandishing her sword against the Swamp Thing there. Below the sword, there's in the green with the yarn hair. That is, of course, Peter Merkel, the Rag Doll, an Earth 2 Flash villain. He's on the cover. And then Peter mentioned Aqualad and Aquagirl, Garth and Tula of Atlantis, holding Lori Lamaris, denizen of a rather different version of Atlantis. Because that was one of the things that Marv Wolfman had complained about in interviews leading up to this story, was about how, just as an example of the different inconsistencies that have developed in DC continuity over the years, was that so many different versions of the Lost City of Atlantis seems to have appeared and become semi-important to DC lore over the years. So trying to reconcile that and just ripping out all the old history and relaying it in a more consistent way was one of his goals. And eventually, via retcon, we learned that Aquaman's Atlantis and Lori Lamaris' Atlantis are just two different city-states of Atlantis, Poseidonus and Tritonus. Yes, it's the Mer people dwell in Tritonus, and that's where Lori Lamaris is from. And she was she first appeared in the Superman comic. She was Superman's college girlfriend. And they met in college, and Lori was always in a wheelchair, and that's because she was trying to hide her fishtail.
Is that Silver Age continuity? Or is
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
Because
that's...
I know that story from the Byrne revamp, but I don't think I've ever read that from the Silver Age.
Lori the Mermaid, that definitely stems back to the Silver Age. And then there's John Stewart, Green Lantern, looking on as Garth and Tula try to hoist Lori off the floor. Above Aquagirl's head there is Commandy, Last Boy on Earth, who was encountered by members of the Great 15 during their expedition to the Great Disaster period. And then above him is the entire, well, not the entire membership, but a selection of members of Sergeant Rock's Easy Company, including Sarge himself standing in the middle of them with kind of the bandolier, those two twin straps across the front of his chest. I'm not going to really try to tell you which are which, but...
you could see the one with the beard is probably Wild
Man.
Wild Man, right?
Yeah.
And the one right by Elongated Man, he looks like possibly his skin tone's a little redder than the others, yeah?
He also looks like he has feathers coming out of his
I
helmet,
know.
so
Okay, yeah, I don't see it. So, yeah, that clearly is...
little sure shot.
Little sure shot, yeah.
And whoever's tallest, probably the guy right between Wild Man and Rock, that's probably Bulldozer. The others, your guess is as good as ours.
Right.
Right in front of them is Earth 1 Superman, enough said. And in front of him, Bouncing Boy and Duo Damsel, Chuck Tane of Earth and Luornu Durgo of Karg. Who by this... she was originally Triplicate Girl, but one of her three selves was murdered by the renegade computer Computo. And since that time, she's only had two selves that she can split into, and so she's been Duo Damsel. And as Peter mentioned, they are married.
Yeah, what's it like in the... Does she have pants in the collection? Or is she in shorts?
In the collection, they have recolored her leg to be purple.
Good, because that's what it should be, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that's another thing that they got right the second time around. And then to the right of them, in the red outfit with the blue cape, that's Mon-El, alias Lar Gand of Daxam, who was a childhood friend of Superboy, but then he contracted lead poisoning, lead being deadly to his people, and he had to be sent into the Phantom Zone for 1,000 years until a cure could be found. And then he was let out, and he joined the Legion. And in front of him is, of course, Carol Ferris, Star Sapphire, a longtime lover / arch enemy of Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern. And even though Hal Jordan is out of the picture right now, we've mentioned it many times, he's one major DC character who makes no appearance in Crisis, although he is mentioned once or twice. But his old paramour is nonetheless present. Unless, this could be the second Star Sapphire, too.
Could be, but at this point, I'm fairly certain she was... because of the whole thing going on with Predator over in Green Lantern. I think at this point she's
back in Star Sapphire.
Was back to, or at least close to being back to Star Sapphire, yeah.
But yeah, there was a second Star Sapphire. Her name was Deborah Camille Darnell.
Right,
who was like a stewardess, I think, and she occasionally spoke in a French accent.
Yeah.
And she was a member of the Secret Society of Supervillains.
Which she pops up in Identity Crisis in one of the JLA issues, I think.
Yes, I knew Johns did something with her somewhere along
brought her
the
back,
line. if only just to kill her.
Did you mention Creeper, by the way?
No, I didn't.
Right above Shrinking Violet?
Yeah, these. Oh gosh, yes. Thank you, Peter.
Sure.
It's another Commander. It's Commander Steel all over again. Yeah. So right between Shrinking Violet and Lori the Mermaid, we have the yellow-skinned dude. That's the Jack Ryder, the Creeper, classic Steve Ditko co-creation. He's a newspaper a TV reporter, like talk show host type figure who gains superpowers from a dying scientist and uses them to prey on crime and pretend to be crazy while doing so. It's kind of a psychological advantage. Okay, so now up...
see, Starboy and Aquaman, I think you haven't mentioned.
Yeah, up there by Mon-El, you've got Earth 1 Aquaman there in the orange shirt. We all know his deal. And to the other side, partly obscured by the observation platform in the black costume with the starfield on it and the brown beard, that is Tom Calor of Xanthu, Starboy, as Peter said. He has gravity and density alteration powers. And for a while there, he had powers very similar to Superboy's. But he was kicked out of the Legion and disgraced when he killed, albeit in self-defense, a jealous ex-boyfriend of his lover, Dream Girl, who again is down there off Dr. Fate talking to Element Lad. Those two are kind of a long-standing Legion couple also. But Ken's Newhor was the name of the guy that he killed, and so he was drummed out of the Legion. But eventually he did rejoin, and he grew a beard. And there he stands. Yeah, that's very much not his classic outfit, which is more like a kind of a Superboy style outfit, but a purple suit with a yellow star on the chest and a white cape. And above him is Rex Mason, Metamorpho, the Element Man. You can see the little M on his belt buckle and the, obviously inhuman color scheme, the chalk white face and the orange and purple torso. And he's a soldier of fortune who was exposed to the Orb of Ra, which is a mystical artifact / meteorite thing that gave him the ability to shapeshift into any element he can imagine. And he's kind of a whacked out Silver Age character and a fan favorite. He's the first character ever to refuse an offer of membership to the Justice League of America. The little guy in the green outfit with the goggles and the beard next to him is Micronogenius alias Gizmo, and he is a member of the Fearsome Five, a team of villains who often faced off against the new Teen Titans. And he's a dwarf, and he's a technological prodigy. He can cobble together fantastic devices out of any kind of junk he has lying around. And the young lady with the white hair in the blue shirt and denim cutoffs, that is Dolphin. She's a little-known DC character of the Silver Age. She had like 1 or 2 appearances in Showcase, and not much was done with her after that. She was just a mysterious undersea beauty, not really a combatant or an adventure character. She was just a mysterious woman who happened to be able to breathe underwater. And she had no memory of her past, and her past remained kind of mysterious until Peter David's Aquaman run in the 90s. So she's another 60s obscurity from like the legendary Silver Age tryout book, birthplace of some unusual concepts, the Showcase series, that is being brought back here in this series.
She did show up as part of the Forgotten Heroes.
I keep forgetting that
action comic story, which I love because that's where I was introduced to like Animal Man and Dolphin and Immortal Man, and it was beautifully drawn by Gil Kane, and probably was the first Vandal Savage story I ever read. So yeah, so she had shown up in those 2 issues prior to this.
Yep, which still kind of bears out my point that she's not
it's Forgotten Hero,
not well known. But yeah, thank you for reminding all of us of that, Peter, because I had forgotten that she was even in the Forgotten Heroes, but she was, and now she's here. And next to her in the red with the mohawk, that's Nuklon. Peter mentioned him before. That's Al Rothstein. He's the godson of Al Pratt, the Earth 2 Atom, and a member of Infinity Inc. And above him there, in the blue and gray with kind of the helmet on his head, that is Doofus P. Ratchet, the mentally disabled individual known as Big Sur. And he's a very un-PC Flash opponent. Not really evil, he's just... he just really doesn't understand the implications of his actions. He's got superhuman strength. He's got some kind of adrenal or glandular thing happening that caused him to grow to that huge size. Somewhere along the way, he acquired an armored costume, and he's been manipulated by the more legitimately criminal Flash rogues into battling the Flash and helping their criminal schemes a few times. Post-Crisis, he became a member of the Injustice League, which is a group of hapless super criminals who eventually determined they were so bad at being villains they might as well try being heroes, so they became the Justice League Antarctica. But yeah, Big Sur was a member of that group. And the guys in the salt and pepper shaker looking helmets next to him, Peter mentioned they were all pointing into the shadows at nothing in particular. Those are the members of the crew of the Haunted Tank. And I'm not going to bother trying to name them either, but the main one is Jeb Stewart, who is, I think, a descendant of General James Ewell Brown Stewart, the famous Civil War general, whose ghost haunts the Haunted Tank. So there they are, minus the tank. And rising up from them is the Mist. That's a Golden Age Starman villain. Right below him, in the red outfit, that's Hank King Jr., Brainwave Jr., the son of the Golden Age villain, the Brainwave, and founding member of Infinity Inc. He's inherited literally all of his father's telepathic powers. He has his own powers, but when his father died, he passed all of his own telepathic might onto his son. So he's now twice the telepath he once was. And he would become kind of a villainous figure later on in the 90s, but at this point he's still a card-carrying member of Infinity Inc. and a definite hero. Next to him is Kimio Hoshi, the brand new Dr. Light, just introduced in Crisis a couple of issues ago. On the other side of Brainwave Jr., in the lady in the green cape with the black cowl, that is Angela Hawkins III, alias Phobia. Anti-Monitor mentions her a couple of times, threatening to replace Psycho Pirate with her, and she has emotion manipulating abilities. And she was a member of the Brotherhood of Evil, as was Plasmus. Right above her is Arion the Immortal, another member of the Great 15. We were introduced to him in the first issue. The big white guy is Solomon Grundy, of course, famous Earth 2 swamp monster. He's on the front cover. And that little half-human, half-robotic head kind of cradled between his Grundy's arm and head, is the head of Tharok of Zadron. He is a cyborg and a member of the Fatal Five, a group of 30th century criminals and opponents of the Legion of Superheroes. And I have to tap you in here, Peter.
Well,
because,
did you do Black Orchid?
Oh, yeah. Right down there, kind of between Phobia in the green and Brainwave Jr. in the red, the purple-looking lady with the butterfly wings sticking out underneath her neck, that is Black Orchid. Thank you, Peter. She first appeared in Adventure Comics in the 70s. She came up in a recent previews episode somehow. I said at that point that she was created by Joe Orlando. Joe Orlando did not write her first appearance, but I'm pretty sure Joe Orlando came up with the basic concept that became the Black Orchid character because he was editing Adventure Comics at that time. And her deal was she was terribly mysterious. She first appeared in 1973, and she was a mistress of disguise. Her past was never to be revealed, or at least not until Neil Gaiman did his Black Orchid miniseries in the late 80s after Crisis. But as of now, she was just, her powers not very well defined. Her secret identity was completely unknown, certainly to us, the readers. And her shtick was just that she would assume various disguises and try to topple criminal organizations from within.
So you're going to ask me who's the person next to Arion?
Yep, between Arion's head and Grundy's head.
Yeah, I don't know who that is. I mean, you sort of want to go, should it be like Lady Chian? But it's just not right. It's not colored right. It's not designed right. You could almost say it's Aqua Girl, but we've almost already seen her already.
It's Little Nemo in Slumberland.
Yeah. So only Perez would know. I'm going to look up the compendium, see if they try to address, but it's all in alphabetical order, so it's like you can't even.
Right. You have to read the whole list and figure out, okay, which of these people on this list haven't I already seen? All right. Well, down
How
below.
How do you feel? You good? You still want to go?
Well, yeah, I'll go a little further, especially since you're going to try and look that mysterious head up. But yeah, there are a couple of members of the Black Hawk team. They're at the very middle of the image, right on the line between the two pages. And we've also got all four members of the Challengers of the Unknown. I guess underneath Alex Luthor's arm, there are two women's heads that I also can't identify.
Right.
And above Alex Luthor's arm, there's a man's head who appears to be wearing an eye patch.
The privateer. Maybe the Manhunter? Wasn't the Manhunter called Privateer?
Well, Mark Shaw.
Mark Shaw?
Yeah, for a while there he did assume the identity of the privateer, but that's not a phase of his career he's proud of.
Or is it a Challenger and it's just the hair? It's the way the hair is sort of, but the inking is too heavy, so it makes it look like it's a...
It could be, because you can't really see all four members of the Chals there. You got
Right.
Rocky Davis. He's the one with the black hair, and I guess that would be Red Ryan with the red hair. So maybe that's Prof. Haley with the brown hair, but it's still, especially in the original comic, it kind of looks like he's wearing an eye patch.
Yeah.
Which he might be Captain Storm of the Losers.
Without his hat.
It's tough.
Yeah.
And any thoughts on who those are underneath Alex's armpit?
No. I mean, they're so nondescript. I mean, he obviously is designing... You know who it could be? It almost feels like it could be like he squeezed in like Adrian Roy or like his wife or something.
I was going to say Adrian Roy is like a real person. Right? She's a colorist.
The colorist, or like Jeanette Kahn or something. He just squeezed in some. But I mean, the one has like a design around the shoulders that I've never been able to place.
Sleeve almost looks like it's ribbed.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes me think of Madame Rouge, but the hair is all wrong for it to be Madame Rouge.
I'm going to go to a different place to look up.
And the lady on the bottom looks like Princess Lilandra of the Shi'ar from the X-Men comics.
She actually looked to me a little bit like Gigi Cuisimano, but there's no from the Legion, one of the science police from Legion of Superheroes.
Oh, okay.
She has kind of that same kind of haircut thing a little bit.
Yeah, the only science police officer I can ever remember is Siobhan Aaron.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, your guess is as good as mine on that one.
And we are, of course, accepting input from you, the listeners. If you have any guesses, please do register them at thecomicforums.vanillacommunity.com. All right, Peter continues to do research over there. So, to the other side of Alex Luthor's body, right off his chin in the black outfit, kind of looks like the face of a cat. That, of course, is Wildcat, Ted Grant, prize fighter turned superhero from Earth 2. In the striped shirt next to him is probably Stripesy, partner in crime fighting of the Star-Spangled Kid, real name Pat Dugan, and he's pretty far away from his partner, the Kid. Not too surprising, since at this point in DC continuity, the two of them are not on the best of speaking terms. They're a bit estranged.
So... in this, I went to the annotations, the crisis annotations online. Who is it? I forget who did this one. They also don't know who the one by Alexander Luthor's butt is, but the other one they're saying is June from the Challengers.
Oh yeah, the ICG guy did say she was in here somewhere, but I know it doesn't look very much like her, and her outfit it doesn't really look like the Challenger's jumpsuit to me.
Yeah, and they don't know who the one by Arion is. By the way, I forgot this one over here. Look at Big Sur. Look at Nuklon's elbow and look at Big Sur. Doesn't that look like Brainstorm's little top hat, metallic little top hat?
Oh my goodness,
but
yes.
It only has like one ridge instead of several.
Yeah, and Brainstorm does appear on panel later on.
Yeah.
Great catch, Peter. I completely overlooked that.
You can sort of see the little bit of purple underneath.
Yeah,
Nuklon.
especially when you consider scale, because Nuklon and Big Sur are both much taller than the average human being.
Yeah.
So Brainstorm would be short enough for his shoulder to be all the way down there, below shoulder level of the other two.
I mean, at first I almost was like, is that the bell from the Demons 3?
Right. The green bell of Uthul. Right. Yeah, and it's even harder if you're looking at the hardcover, because they colored, whoever did the recoloring for this didn't notice that helmet either, Peter, because they colored it blue to blend in with Big Sur's costume. But in the original issue, you can see it standing out silver against Big Sur's blue outfit. So, yeah, that is a great catch, Peter.
I think I probably just noticed that for the first time right now.
And I sure as heck never noticed it before, despite all the time we've spent looking at this stuff. All right, well, let's see.
Where you at? Wildcat?
Yeah, Wildcat and Stripesy, and then Tin of the metal man right in front of them, looking worried, as you already mentioned. And then in front of him, in the red outfit with the full facial visor and the Lauren stripe on his head, that is Wildfire, formerly known as Erg-1 of the Legion of Superheroes. Originally named Drake Burroughs, his body was converted to pure energy, and that jumpsuit is the only thing that's keeping his cohesion together. He needs that suit to continue to exist. But he has a great deal of power inside that suit, in that energy form of his. All right, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, Peter.
Okay.
Tagging you in.
All right. We have standing together as they should be Spectre and Phantom Stranger, two characters who will have a lot more to do with each other after the crisis, but certainly two very cosmic, spiritual superheroes some points and sort of narrators at others. So I love that they're standing together. We have, I already mentioned, you mentioned Stripesy, right? Yeah, we got Mammoth and Shimmer behind them, who we talked about. Johnny Thunder below them in the green outfit there. His Thunderbolt is nowhere to be found.
Could possibly be Constantine, but I prefer to think it's Johnny, too.
Yeah.
He looks a lot like the way he's drawn, and Constantine was drawn and colored when he showed up a couple issues ago.
Yeah. And he looks a little neat, but I guess, Constantine is so new at this point that...
well, yeah, he hadn't evolved his disheveled appearance yet.
And then right in front of him, that's one of the cheetahs, right? That's probably Cheetah of Earth 1?
It would have to be Earth 2.
Oh, Earth 2, that's what I meant.
Because Priscilla Rich of Earth 1, apparently she did have a career as the cheetah on Earth 1, but she was dead by this time.
Okay.
Her niece, Debbie Domain, had taken over.
Right. That white character in the background.
It's a ghost.
Is that the ghost? Yeah, the ghost from the Charlton characters?
No, I'm kidding, Peter. I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be Vibe. He's just not colored.
Oh, did they color him? In
the hardcover, he's just kind of white in the original issue, but in the hardcover, it's not the right colors for Vibe's costume even now.
It's not the right design at all.
But it's not the ghost either. I was just joking.
But I wonder if maybe it was supposed to be, but and that's like an oops on Perez's part. It's like, no, that's supposed to be Charlton, Captain Atom villain.
Well, that's Earth 4 anyway.
That's what I meant. He's not supposed to be on here. Maybe that's why they colored him to be Vibe in there. I thought we see Vibe somewhere later.
We do from the back, a couple of pages on.
Yeah.
But that's my best guess for him, Paco Ramon.
The other character is... In the villain war, Perez draws a character that was elongated man in disguise. Like in the actual comic, it was elongated man masquerading as a hero. I can look it up here. And when you look at the annotations, Perez drew the character, but it really wasn't. It wasn't really supposed to be like a villain. It just was. Perez just took it as a villain, but is like, oh no, that's not that. That was just elongated man on a one-off story, And I wonder if maybe that's just another appearance of him, because when I show it to you, his costume kind of looks the same. Sorry, listeners. We'll get there. Right there. This guy. See how it has the same sort of tunic and the shoulder things that go up.
Huh.
And in the original issues, he's not colored green and yellow. He's like colored like a grayish character.
Weird.
So I don't know if maybe that's supposed to be him, but it's a mistake on Perez's part.
And he's firing energy blasts from his hands, too.
Yeah. All right, so we don't know who that is. Dr. Polaris, right below him, the guy with the antlers, purple and blue. We've seen him as part of the Great 15. Per Degaton standing next to him with a big D on his chest. We talked about him on the cover on the Earth 2 side. He's sort of like a Hitler-esque megalomaniac. And then next to him, there's Johnny Thunder that we mentioned in the red and blue, holding up a gun as if that's going to help him.
No, that's all he's got. This is the Earth 1 Johnny Thunder, whose real name is John Tane.
Right, cowboy.
Whereas the Earth 2 Johnny Thunder is actually named Johnny Thunder, son of Simon and Mildred Thunder.
And we saw him in issue number 3. You're going to ask me about who's next to him, the little, the guy in the gray. Do we know who that is?
That's another one of my question marks. My best guess for him had been Major Disaster, but that doesn't quite scan.
Could it be Vandal Savage?
Um,
And like what we're supposed to see is his beard, but it makes it look like it's like a mask, but it's really a beard. Because it kind of looks like Vandal Savage's
I like that
suit.
guess.
You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean?
it's just Sometimes, yeah, especially in like the Silver Age, he wore something of a jumpsuit costume.
Yeah.
Let me see if he's depicted in Who's Who wearing that. Yeah, here we go. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Look at the
think-
ways the white stripe down the front of the shirt and the outlined white collar. And we can't see whether he's got jodhpurs or not. But
Oh, geez, sorry.
sorry, folks.
That's going to sound good. Sorry. Yeah, they just color him weirdly. It almost makes it look like, oh.
Rock the mic.
Is it, let me look at the compendium. The compendium makes it look like it's, who's the bug guy?
The bug guy.
Is it Bug? It's Bug from Who's Who, from Firestorm.
Where?
The Vandal Savage, the one where, let me look at Who's Who real quick.
The bug guy. Well, I remember Bug and Bite.
Bug-eyed
but,
Bandit. Look up Bug-eyed Bandit.
well, Bug and Bite and Bug-eyed Bandit should be right next to each other.
Right.
Okay, so there's Bug and Bite, and Bug's got kind of a green and purple
No, so
skin
it's
going
not
on
him.
with those robotic tendrils coming out of his shoulders. And there's
No,
Bug-eyed
it's not.
Bandit.
It's not Bug-eyed Bandit.
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
So I'm going to say Vandal Savage. Do you like that?
I do like that guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me open up my index here to see if it mentions Vandal Savage appearing in this issue, because it does not. But what do they know?
What are they?
I like that. The trades recoloring does make it, because it makes the lower half of the face look skin tone and the upper half look like a mask, when Perez's intentions may have been the opposite.
Yeah.
Certainly the way it's colored in the original.
I'm also looking up another annotation. Let's see.
Well, while you're doing that, we haven't mentioned. Well, the big stretchy red guy is Mercury of the Metal Men, another one of those four corner stretchers that frame the image. And below him, in the white hat, Peter mentioned Cinnamon. We'll learn much later that her real name was Kate Manser, but her real name was never given in her stories, and she was a Wild West character that was introduced fairly recently. I think it might even have been like 1980 when she first popped up in comics. And yeah, her deal was that she was the daughter of a sheriff who was murdered, and she used throwing stars similar to her father's old badge as weapons in battles with bad men.
Here you go. One of the annotations online also puts it as at Vandal Savage.
All right.
Doesn't know any of the other ones.
Little vindication.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Did you get Cinnamon? You got Cinnamon?
Yeah, I think I got Cinnamon.
And we got Green Arrow, Ollie of Earth 1, probably looking for Black Canary.
And not finding her because I don't think she's in this image.
Yeah. Huntress of Earth 2. We've talked about her. We talked about Timberwolf Lightning last. Lead of the Metal Men, looking kind of very squat and kind of silly. He's blending into Pariah's hair color there. Did you get Robot Man?
I
Doom
did
Patrol?
not talk about Robot. Yeah, that's
Robot
the
Man.
Earth 1 Doom Patrol Robot Man.
Yeah, Cliff Steele, right? And love that he's there as part of the Doom Patrol. They don't get much coverage. Well, there is a series. Is there a series? No, it's post-crisis, their series. So the last time we really seen them is like in New Teen Titans, probably.
Yeah. Well, later on we get mentioned that they've brought the new Doom Patrol out of mothballs. So
Yeah.
we have a couple members of that team between Cliff himself and Celsius further down. But he's back in his original design though. They redesigned him for his
Right.
for the Doom Patrol's appearances in the revived Showcase series in the 70s.
We have Jonah Hex, the cowboy there, standing next to Cole. You can just make out that his face is a little disfigured. And we saw him on issue 3 as well. And then standing next to him, Cole from the New Teen Titans, a member that Wolfman created to specifically die in the Crisis.
Mm-hmm.
That'll come
Just
out.
to play fair.
Yeah, a couple issues later. You can see Jonah Hex holding his gun in front of her, down by her middle section there. It's kind of weird. We got Batman. We got Earth 2 Robin we mentioned. We mentioned Polar Boy in a costume that not quite sure that should be the costume he should be wearing. Batgirl. We make another Batgirl appearance. We're not going to get many more Batgirl appearances. I mean, as a character within DC, I mean, she's quickly going to retire this uniform. So I think we get. Do we get a Batgirl special before she becomes Oracle? I think?
Yes, we definitely
before
do.
Killing Joke, I should say. Yeah.
And a Secret Origins story as well, I think.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, it was her and Dr. Midnight sharing the cover on that. But yeah, there was a Batgirl special. Might even have been, yeah, where she goes up against a villain called Cormorant, I believe.
She sort of gets a quiet retirement. Well, until she gets shot.
Right.
Halo of the Outsiders standing in front of her, shimmering with her little streaks in her hair. We talked about her on the cover. Let me jump back. Since Pariah, he looks like a good border there. Did we mention Cinnamon? We already mentioned. I think I asked that the fifth time.
Yep.
Liberty Bell of Earth 2, standing there with a word balloon covering her face, stem of a word balloon there. Chairman of the All-Star Squadron by this point, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Blue Devil hiding behind Mercury's elongated body. You can see him with his trident in his hand. Don't see his face. Semi-regular, new to the DC universe, probably about a year old by now, maybe a year and a half, but no more than that.
Yeah, I think he made his first appearance in '84.
Yeah. So it's great to see a new character like that pop up. Earth 2, Superman and Dawnstar we talked about. Let's see, Sunboy is going over to check on what's going on Dawnstar, with Dawnstar. He has his back to us there in the red and yellow with his red hair. If you look under the feet of Shining Knight and Winged Victory, did we mention them yet?
Well, we've mentioned them, but we haven't really addressed them.
Yeah, we saw them in issue number 3, I think, 3 or 4.
Yep. And Sir Justin's on the cover.
Right.
The horse isn't, but he is.
Underneath Black Lightning, we got Black Lightning right there, and I just noticed there is a leg right there between Mercury and Black Lightning's arm. Looks like
it's a phantom limb.
Gray leg. It kind of looks like a Superman boot. What's the color in the?
It's gray in the original issue, and it's more of a pale purple in the hardcover.
Oh, I wonder if it's like amethyst. Well,
it doesn't look like there's a body attached to it, though.
There sort of is if you keep going up next to Blue Devil's shoulder. There's kind of something there.
Yeah, something, but what?
Yeah, there's also...
Is it a shoulder? Is it...
like a belt, maybe, or...
have to be a pretty tall individual.
Yeah, but there's a lot of purple going on around there.
Maybe it's Validus.
There's also... wow. Oh, no, that's Blue Devil's Trident. They colored Blue Devil's Trident wrong in the collection. We got Firestorm and Killer Frost we mentioned. We got Scalp Hunter. We mentioned him standing next to Batlash. Let's see, a lot of these characters we already hit. Lightning Lad and Saturn Girl we hit. Keep going down Plastic Man's neck. We got Amazing Man, the green and yellow character there from the cover. Adam talked about him on the cover. We got Blockbuster squished in there between Plastic Man's neck and the monitor satellite. Which Blockbuster is this by now? 2?
I think it must be.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, there was the original, whose name was Mark Desmond, I think, and then his brother Roland Desmond repeated the whatever kind of adrenal secretion that Mark Desmond had used to turn himself into the Hulk ripoff that he became.
Right.
Yeah, he was a Batman villain a couple of times.
Yeah. Standing behind him with her back to us is White Witch. You can see her little eyebrow antennas above her head there. And almost in opposition to her is Shadow Lass, who also by this point, well, maybe in another issue or 2, goes from having that short scalped hair to having long black hair. So they're standing next to each other. Martian Manhunter standing behind Shadow Lass there in the green skin and the blue cape. And I had this in my notes, but I didn't. I totally forgot there. I think I skipped it. We have the 2 Wonder Women standing near each other. We have Diana of Earth 1 facing us. She has the double-breasted W's on her chest. But then Diana of Earth 2 has gray hair. She has her back to us. She's standing behind Jay Carrick, Flash. You can sort of make out that she still has the eagle on her chest there. You can just sort of see it. And they're facing each other, so that's kind of cool that they're going to have a little powwow. Underneath Pariah's armpit, that is iron. Is that the symbol for iron? Is that? Yeah, I guess that's.
Yeah, you can't make out the arrow pointing off to the side very well, but
that's right. So that's iron behind him. One of the metal men. So we got a number of the metal men here. I guess the only one. Let's see. We have lead. We have iron. We got mercury. We saw gold. Yeah, we got all of them. Platinum and tin. Right? Yeah.
Yep. That's at that time there were only 5 of them. So
great. We mentioned Starfire and Dick as Nightwing, and Silver Scarab and Fury. Let's go underneath Pariah's cape. There's the Mirror Master in that little green head dress. You can tell he looks like he's got like those giant earmuff things going on. Such a strange costume.
Yeah.
Supergirl and Brainiac 5. There's another member of the Doom Patrol between them, Celsius. Can't see her eyes. She was created as part of the new Doom Patrol, also in a showcase issue, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. She had alternating powers of one side of her was like heat and fire, and the other one was ice and cold and something like that.
Yep. She claimed to be the wife of the original chief.
Yeah.
Niles called her.
And then standing next to her, you can just make out a little circlet and part of his little tunic there, Mr. Jericho himself of the New Teen Titans, another Wolfman Perez creation. More of a Perez creation, but more from the New Teen Titans outside of the Judas Contract, who was once cosplayed by Mr. Adam Murdo.
Yep, that's right, for a Halloween party. I made my sideburns even bigger for the occasion.
And then below Brainiac 5 and Supergirl, we have Tarantula of Earth 2. I think he's on the cover, right?
He is, yeah.
Jonathan Law also has a really good role to play in that James Robinson Golden Age miniseries that we talked about earlier. Underneath Pariah's legs, one of the clay faces, probably. The little thing that looks like he's... Or is it like... No, it's not Tomahawk, because we see him... He's being interviewed by Lois Lane, so it's not him. He looks muddy, right?
Well, he's wearing a buckskin jacket, I'm pretty sure. And
is that what that's supposed to be?
He's got red hair. So yeah.
Oh, did they change it in the collection?
Yeah, he's...
Then it's probably fire hair.
Either that or one of the Trigger twins.
See, there's fire hair on the next page.
But... Okay, it could be fire hair, but Roy Thomas establishes the Trigger twins are up there. And we should probably have said this a little while ago. This same scene is shown in a couple of the crossovers, too.
Oh, right.
So different writers get to establish that a few extra characters are present. So it's expanded on in Infinity Inc. number 22 and 24, All-Star Squadron number 55, and even Swamp Thing number 46. So Roy Thomas gets to stick in some of his favorite historical characters. Thanks to that, and the Trigger twins are among them. So
maybe that is, yeah.
So it's either Walt or Wayne Twigger. Walt or Wayne Twigger, yeah. Walt or Wayne Trigger, who are twin brothers who hid the fact that they were twins to kind of give them an edge on the desperados that they would fight as
are they
Wild West sheriffs.
They're in the Who's Who, right?
Oh, yeah, they're definitely in the Who's
Who. Bring those up real quick.
I think we got Infantino art going on, possibly.
Let's keep going while he's looking that up.
Powwow Smith.
Oh, that's who I was thinking it might be. Powwow Smith.
Trigger twins. It is Infantino art. Yep. Walt Trigger is the sheriff, and Wayne Trigger is just a shopkeeper who acts as body double for his sheriff brother to help confuse the bad guys. And sure enough, they have red hair.
It does look but look up Powwow Smith. I think he almost looks the same, doesn't he?
Powwow Smith is part American Indian, so he does not have red hair.
Okay.
But there he is, also drawn by Infantino. So
look, he looks the same. He's got the same costume.
The same pose. Well, it's Infantino both times. Same pose, arms akimbo. So Powwow Smith, Indian lawman.
Yeah, definitely a Wild West character. I like that. I'll take Trigger, one of the Trigger twins. Chameleon Boy underneath him. There in the purple and yellow, Reap Daggle, one of the Durlins, Legion of Superheroes member. He's far away from Prody. He's probably going to go walk over to him.
And Prody won't talk to him.
In one of Plastic Man's squiggles, right by his belt, that's Alan Scott, looking very Marty Nodell.
Yeah,
in the way he's drawing him.
Absolutely.
Alan Scott, Green Lantern. And then we have underneath Plastic Man's chest, Geoforce, another member of the Batman and the Outsiders. You can just see the G and the F on his emblem on his chest. Brian Markov, Terra from the New Teen Titans, half-brother. Then we have Copperhead, the guy who has like the orangey, it looks like a lizard, but it's supposed to be like a snake on his head. A villain of Batman?
A bunch of people.
Hawkman? I forget.
Well, yeah, he's kind of considered part of Hawkman's gallery, but he gets around. I mean, he first appeared in Brave and the Bold, so he first appeared as like as going two ways. His very first appearance, he was fighting two heroes.
And then next to him is that Kang, Kung, Kong. I forget what the
Kung.
Kung.
K-U-N-G, the assassin of 1,000 claws.
Right, a Wonder Woman character.
Yeah. He first appeared during that run of Wonder Woman in the late 70s, which we mentioned earlier, which was set in World War II. So he was seen fighting like the Earth 2 Wonder Woman, and his origin is very similar to. Well, his background is very similar to Tsunami, who was on the cover, in that he was an American-born, Japanese American who studied in Japan and came to turn against his native America and joined the Imperial forces during World War II. And he had the ability to turn himself into various animals.
Okay.
And Roy Thomas picked him up and used him in All-Star Squadron 2.
So apparently Jonathan Woodward also says that character is Firehair, but I still like the Trigger Twins thing because there's just not enough. I mean, we see Firehair, and it's
They don't look the same.
They don't look the same. I agree. There's no feather in the hair. There's no pigtails.
It's a different shade of red.
Yeah, not so. And then with his back to us, in between the two Plastic Man arms, and it looks like he has a ponytail. Everybody says that's Samurai. I don't know who the hell that is.
Well, you see a better image of him a little later on.
Oh.
But, yes, Sumo Samurai Warrior is his full name, and I think he first appeared in the same range of Wonder Woman issues.
Oh, okay.
Or no, you know what? It might have been in the All-Star Comics run. Shoot. Yeah, he's not in Who's Who.
No, he's that forgettable. I don't even see him in the thing. Oh, yeah, there is Vibe. With his back to us. And he does have that sleeveless tunic thing going on, which I didn't think that's what he wore at that point. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, but the scene where everybody gathers at the Batcave.
Oh, right.
You see Sumo from the front at
that
point.
I gotcha. Yep. There he is. God, how many times have we looked at this thing, and some of these things is the first time I think I've ever seen that ponytail there. I think that's it. Did we get everybody?
I think we may just have, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we made it all the way around the room. And we're at 2 minutes, 51 seconds.
2 hours, 51
2 2 hours, 51 minutes, and 30 seconds.
There you go. Is there somebody standing behind Perdegaton and Johnny Thunder of Earth 1?
I see that it's another ghost. I noticed that too. It's this mysterious white patch, which look with what looks like the outline of a hand holding a pistol in front of it.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, I don't know what to make of that.
That's Marvel, Phantom Eagles Marvel.
Yes.
What do they do in the, it's still the sort of the same.
Just a white blob with a little black silhouette of a pistol.
And we already got Mist. Is it, could it be fogged? He doesn't use a gun. No. All right. Wow. Are we going to keep going?
How many more pages of this should be? I mean, the halfway point is still like 5 pages away.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff to talk about in these 4 pages. I mean, it's 3 hours. We want to make this an episode, and
yeah, I think we can probably call it at that point. Yeah.
Okay.
And I still say we can probably get through the remainder of the issue in a single episode. I mean, there are some fairly crowded pages between here and there, but nothing like what we've just what we've just weathered.
I think the biggest takeaway about that crowd scene too, and I'll talk more about it later, is just again like this idea of bringing DC's characters together. And we've had team up books. We got DC Comics Presents. We got Brave and the Bold. But there's just something really interesting about seeing the different genres, the war, the horror, the supernatural mixing together, and the future, the past, the present. sort of what I call like the super science characters, like Metal Men and Doom Patrol, and the high adventure like Challengers and
Sea Devils.
Sea Devils. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting when we get to a couple more characters that we're going to see later. This idea of bringing the DC universe together, and Wolfman's intentions of saying, look, we got all these characters. They're going to exist on one Earth. And it's our job to allow them to be together, right? Like if we're going to come out of this with a universe of characters, we have to kind of find a place for all of them. Because even though the war heroes have teamed up with Superman, and Blackhawks have teamed up with Superman, and these characters have met. Commandy and Superman have met by this point.
A couple of times, I think.
Yeah. They still were kind of shunted, right? They still were like Superman wasn't going to show up in Sergeant Rock's title. Sergeant Rock was going to show up in DC Comics Presents.
And
right?
he did.
And he did.
Within the first year's worth of stories.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be interesting to talk about some other characters in that same light when we return to this, about their intentions of trying to pinpoint what their universe is going to be post-crisis. Where all these things are going to have to exist in one way or another.
What kind of strangely shaped container will they need to construct to hold all of these things?
Yeah,
and put them into an even suspension, because that's kind of a half-baked chemistry metaphor I was going to use for what was happening with time and space being out of whack here. It's like an uneven suspension in need of an emulsifier.
Yeah.
So what are they going to do to emulsify all of this haphazardly created all these stories told in different genres by different creators at different time periods, different sets of values, and how do we bring them all together and make them all simultaneously relevant to the 80s?
Right. I mean, they made the decision to include Sergeant Rock and his company. They made the decision to include Haunted Tank. And some would argue that pre-crisis, a lot of those titles existed because they were their own thing. It was the war genre of books. It was the horror genre of books. They didn't have to exist within the DC universe. But then post-crisis, it almost felt like they have to exist. They had to find a way to make them a little more part of the beaker or whatever it was you just said. So, yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to explore. So it's kind of nice that we ended on this double-page spread here.
Oh, one more thing I wanted to point out, just another coloring snafu, which we'll see again in a couple of pages later. Brainiac 5 down there underneath Pariah's cape, he's got kind of a funny-looking tan.
Yeah.
Supposed to be green, and he's beige.
I can't imagine Tony Tollin, he probably saw this and, probably just quietly walked away from his desk and went and, chopped down a tree and then screamed,
Yeah, we do have to give the guy credit. I mean, this was no easy task. So, of course, some mistakes are going to be made. So we're not trying to be too hard on him.
No. And Ordway having to ink all this. Oh, yeah. So.
But I think he's almost as big a glutton for punishment as Perez, though.
Yeah.
He's a detail junkie. Not to the same degree that Perez is, but maybe just a step or two down the same spectrum.
All right. Well, we got to page 8.
8 out of, 25. Oh, dear. Yeah. Nope. We can do it.
We can do it?
I believe in us, Peter.
I got a lot of pages. I mean, a lot of notes. Oh, wait. Here. It ends right there.
Yep.
Okay. We'll get it.
All right, so we'll be back with at least and hopefully no more than one more episode about issue number 5 on Crisis on Infinite Earths. But in the meantime, just take some time to digest all that we have said to you during this session. Please do go, as suggested earlier, to thecomicforums.vanillacommunity.com, which is our forum site for all Comic Geek Speak related discussion. So go there, check out the thread about this episode, share your thoughts about that 2-page spread, any guesses you may have about those mysterious characters we couldn't identify and the internet couldn't either, and we
want proof. We don't just want regurgitation of some of those annotations, like because they're good for backing up and reference, but they can be wrong too, just as we can. So we want why do you know it's that character?
Show your work.
Show your work. Show your work.
Yes, provide convincing evidence to support your point. This is this is rhetoric on Infinite Earths too. Apparently,
this is not some fly-by-night podcast.
No,
we're 10 years old.
And in podcast terms, that's pretty darn venerable.
Yes.
So anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for following along with us, and enjoy all that has transpired in the first 8 pages of Crisis Number 5. And we will be back with you sooner than you may think to go over the rest.